Hey everyone, TheoryWise here. Before we jump into the podcast, I want to thank you for listening and mention that this is the very first episode of Fireside, meaning that it's a little scuffed while I figure out the format. These are meant to be casual conversations, not interviews, so if that interests you, stick around and subscribe to the channel for more. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome to a special episode of unscripted theory-wise conversations, I guess. I usually just yap to myself and, speak to a wall, but today I have a very special guest to join me in a yap session. I have Unguided, known as Unguided, but Alien Food is of course what he really is. That's his channel name. He is kind of an unguided extraordinaire. He kind of popularized in many ways the this trend that we're seeing a lot of people adopt, whether it be vicariously or with direct knowledge of their core inspiration. I think that he's bringing back a kind of vibe, a nostalgic vibe to old school RuneScape content that has gone missing over time with all the min-maxing and all the rest of this stuff. So I'm really happy to have him because I've been watching his videos for a long time and he's here willing to have a conversation. Unguided Alien Food. Welcome to, I guess, my channel.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, that was quite the introduction. I mean, yeah, felt a little bit bizarre hearing all that stuff and being like, "Oh, that's me."
Hey, it's
But
okay.
thank you for having me. Thank you for
Listen,
having me.
you're a one-time nominee and winner of the Golden Gnome, right? So that's you kind
Yeah,
of deserve a
yeah.
little bit of ego there. That's pretty awesome. That's like winning an Emmy in the gaming space. I feel like it's pretty sweet. I guess we can just start off with that. How was it feel like? You started your channel, or at least started making the Unguided series relatively recently. I think it's what two and a
Yeah,
half years now. And you won
yeah,
a Golden
about that.
Gnome.
Yeah, absolutely bizarre, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, so I started the series about 2 years and 4 months ago from this point, so September 2025. Started it in May 2023. And just, I mean, I had the idea for the series for a while, like going back 2 years at least before actually starting it. It's just a curiosity of mine. I was just like, has anyone tried to complete all the quests in RuneScape without using the guides and the plugins and all that sort of stuff? Because I was just actively curious. But yeah, 2 years and then kind of winning the Golden Gnome was a very surreal moment. I mean, I think even just the nomination was kind of like enough. It was a really cool experience, especially being alongside the content creators that were also nominated was just pretty amazing because they were all ridiculously good content creators. And a couple of them like are now kind of cool close friends, which is really cool. But yeah, it was very surreal. I mean, RuneFest as a whole was really, really awesome. I'd never been to one before. I'd never really been to any sort of expo like that. And it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, that was that kind of like the icing on the cake, I guess. But as I said, it would have been great for anyone to win it because I think the company I was in was just, yeah, really, really top notch. So to be included in that and then to actually win it was pretty surreal. But it was yeah, it felt really nice. It was like kind of like a recognition, I guess, which was cool. But yeah, it's
Sure.
something, I've got it sitting above me right now. I'm kind of looking, I've got my monitors and I've got a shelf in front of me on my wall and it's sitting up there and it's something that I can kind of like look up every now and then see. And it's just like a cool little reminder of something I've achieved. And I think that's the nice thing about it is like, whatever happens with YouTube in the future, with the series, anything like that, that's something I've got there as like a kind of a memory, which is really, really awesome. So yeah, that was very surreal, but also something that I would say, kind of sits up there with one of the best things that's happened since starting this journey.
For sure.
If not the best, it was brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I will say, like, to touch on the content creation space. I'm actually unsure. Before like your Unguided series really kicked off, did you have a lot of experience doing content creation on YouTube, or was this kind of your first venture into it, or OSRS content?
This is completely the first time. Yeah, had never done anything content wise, never done anything outside of RuneScape or within RuneScape. It was purely, the first thing. I'd never even thought about YouTube, particularly like kind of being a YouTuber or anything like that. It was always just like a kind of the idea first. It was like I had this idea, as I mentioned, 2 years before. I'd kind of talked to a mate about it. Yeah, it would have been 4 or 5 years ago now, maybe even earlier than that, actually. I think it might have been pre-COVID. And I was kind of like, yeah, I've got this idea for like a RuneScape series. I've not seen anyone, and I always just check every now and then. I go onto YouTube and just type in kind of like Questcape without guides or something like that to see if anyone had
Mm.
done anything around it, and I couldn't find anything. And he was like, "Go for it, like man, like do it." And I was just lazy, had never really got around to it. And then I don't know what it was. One weekend, I was just like, "Yeah, let's just give it a go. Like, let's just. I think it'd be fun to try it in game. Like that would be the first and foremost enjoyment out of it. But let's try and record it." And it was. I think you can tell if you go back to my kind of episode 1, you can kind of tell it was my first video because I don't really know how to talk into a microphone properly. I'm kind of like
Right.
whispering into it. I don't really know what to say, so I'm just kind of like just barely talking. You can kind of hear my clips. It's very kind of, I guess, slow paced and a bit different. And but yeah, that was my first ever venture into content creation. I kind of made episode 1. I think the fortunate thing with my series, and even back then in episode 1 and 2 and 3, even maybe more so, is the time needed to put into the videos is almost kind of what you see, if that makes sense. So if the video is an hour long, chances are I've probably been recording for about 2 hours, maybe something like that. Whereas a lot of RuneScape content, you have to put in hundreds and hundreds of hours to get a 20-minute video.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
for sure, for sure.
I was quite fortunate in that sense, and it kind of gave me that ability to, I guess, kickstart it without having to put too much of a heavy lift in, and create some videos and kind of be like, because there was a point where I almost stopped after my 5th or 6th episode, where I was kind of uploading videos and kind of getting like views from my mates, and that was it. Like I'd get like kind of 6 or 7 views, and that was it. And I was like uploading my Dragon Slayer video, which is my 5th episode, I think, and that one got about 25 views, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, we're cooking now. We're cooking. Like this is like big numbers, because I before that was genuinely getting, just like I'd have a couple of mates that would watch my stuff, and that was it. And so I kind of thought, oh, if this is getting, 0 traction, I'm on episode 6, I might stop. But yeah, I just think that the main thing is I was actually enjoying playing the game. I was just enjoying it for the first time again in years, because I've kind of played RuneScape on and off my entire life. But at that point, I was quite bored and just didn't know what to do. And this gave me like a solid challenge to try and take on. So I was like,
For
well, I'm
sure.
going to carry on playing anyway.
What
Why
is
not just try and record it?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. What was the
That's all right.
first and because I tapped into your content, I only started playing the game a year and a half ago. So you kind of started making
Mm.
content a bit before that. And I know that when I first started hearing your name get brought up and the series brought up, I was already playing the game a little bit and you already had some traction behind yourself. What was the first
Mm.
video that kind of like brought eyes on your channel? Because I thought that you were already picked up by the time you got Dragon Slayer, because I remember that being the video that I really got invested in the series too. So I'm wondering what is
Mm.
the first one that really got eyes on your content?
I mean, it's yeah. So I think Dragon Slayer was the first one where I had like tens of people watching. Like, I had a couple of comments off the back of it as well for the first time, people that I didn't know. So that was the first one, but it's still kind of tens of people, not even hundreds at that point. But that was enough for me to kind of be like, oh, actually, this, some people seem to be watching this, which is cool. Um, but then I did the video after that, which was the first membership video. Then I think second members video, which was my start of my journey to a crystal bow. That one I remember getting a couple of hundred views, and that was when I was like, okay, cool, this is starting to grow a little bit. But it was still like, very, very. I didn't really have that. You can often see it with kind of when a new series starts or something like that. You'll see a massive spike on episode 1, and then it might kind of slope off a little bit over time. I guess I didn't really have that massive. Like, if you look at my data now, it will obviously episode 1 will be popular because people hear about it and they go to episode 1, which is completely understandable. But I think my episode 1 was so slow and boring that a lot of people just fall off after that. But when I was actually in the process of uploading it, it didn't happen like that. It was much more like, I think episode 7 kind of got a couple of hundred views. And then I remember this was months later. I think it was episode 20 something, where I did a trip to Barbarian Assault to get the fighter torso. That was the first one that did like tens of thousands of views. It kind of took it from like, I think I was getting kind of low, maybe like 1,500 views per episode. And then that one got like 10,000 views in the first month it was live. And it kind of, I remember it was like uploaded around Christmas. Funny how I remember these things like relating to that kind of moment, but I do remember it like around Christmas time, like looking at it and being like, oh wow, this is actually kind of popping off a little bit. And it was the first video that I kind of think went and stretched kind of really far and started picking up some traction that way. And I kind of got a couple of hundred subscribers, maybe I think maybe even like 1,000 subscribers by that point. So that was kind of one that I feel like, yeah, it kind of really hit. But it's hard to put it down to like a single moment, because there are a lot of moments throughout the kind of last 2 years where it was like where the growth came from. There were other content creators that shouted me out, which I remember those moments as well, because I saw a massive influx of traffic kind of coming over, and you know, the likes of Josh Isn't Gaming, I remember him shouting me out, and I was kind of stood there in my kitchen just looking at looking at my views after that went live and just being like, whoa, this is nuts. That was a really wholesome moment. And then Jimmy as well.
Yeah, the Jimmy shout out is where I was like, I heard about something with Unguided stuff on like a Reddit or whatever. And then I remember
Yeah.
watching a Jimmy video where he shouted you out and he was like high praise on your content, very natural content, very kind of like driven by authenticity more so than anything else. And I was like, okay, you know, I'll check it out. Fine, you got me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I got super, super into it, especially by the Dragon Slayer video. To this day, I think my favorite video from you, just for the audacity of it, the really unexplored edges of it, almost gave me Swampletics vibes in some cases, was the Legends Quest video. I think a lot of
Oh,
people
right. Yeah.
love that one so much. Like my favorite parts with Swampletics, if you've seen the series, is just the
Yeah.
discovery element of it is really fascinating
Yeah.
to me. And that Legends Quest video is like, that's the discovery element of it, discovering like interactions that weren't even on the wiki page. That's such a
Yeah.
cool, crazy thing, especially for a wiki page like the one OSRS has, which is like unbelievably meticulous and thorough,
Yeah.
you know?
That's all. I think that genuinely might be my favorite moment in the series for me personally as well. Like, I remember that because when I'm doing things, you don't really know it's kind of hard to describe, but you don't know what's content and what's not content, if that makes sense, when you're actually doing it. Like, I still to this day probably haven't got the best gauge of like why people enjoy the videos, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm kind of like doing it and I'm gonna getting frustrated, and I can understand why that might be quite entertaining to watch at times. But I remember uploading that video of the Legends Quest. I think that was like the third episode, because I think it turned out to be like 4 episodes Legends Quest.
Yeah.
And that third one, I think it was, I can't quite remember, it might be second or third one. And then I kind of have to be really careful with my comments, obviously, for spoiler reasons. But at that time, I was quite a bit smaller, and I kind of peek at them every now and then. If I think something's a spoiler, I kind of try and dodge it. But even people in like, you know, I'm in a kind of Discord group with some other content creators, even they were saying it as well. And I kind of saw this comment about the fact that I'd discovered like a chat dialogue that hadn't been reported on the wiki. And I think it was a really cool moment, because it was just like something that I didn't even realize was a thing when I did it. I just thought it was what I needed to do for the quest, to then discover it was actually something that hadn't been seen for God knows how many years. That was a really cool moment, because I think it kind of just, for me, summed what the series hopefully is trying to be. That's kind of those little moments where people are kind of like, oh, I didn't know that, or oh, I remember that. Like, it's those little bits of emotion that I quite like to hear about in comments. And that was very cool. But the whole of Legends Quest was truly mad. I mean, probably the hardest quest I've actually done still so far. There's a couple of other ones, but I think that looking back on it is, yeah, it's like some of the fondest memories I've got of creating the series is the Legends Quest, because it is truly like old school. It makes total, it's really interesting, because before doing it, I didn't know that the Legends Quest was kind of the end of Classic, which is what it is. Like, it's, you know, it's the kind of final quest when RuneScape was in its Classic stage. I had no idea. And I've played this game, on and off for 20 years. I had absolutely no idea because the way that we play the game today is obviously not the same as it used to be. So when I have ever done Legends Quest in the past, I think I probably would have done it once in my life years ago on my main account. I would have used guides. I wouldn't have even realized that it was that difficult a quest. You just go through the motions. Maybe it takes a bit long, but you're not really like, this is difficult. But doing it without guides, I was like, okay, this makes complete sense as to why this was the end of Classic, because this is like a Grandmaster quest. Like, if I'm not done any yet, but it felt like this pinnacle. It felt like this and it took me I think about 12 to 13 hours to do in kind of real time. And yeah, like 4 episodes long, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. Like, kind of completing that and thinking there were moments where I thought, this is not going to happen. I can't do this. I remember doing it. I think I did it over a 2-3 day period and just kept coming back to my computer, sitting down. Sometimes just sit there and stare at my computer. Like, I wouldn't even be logged in, and I'd be thinking about the quest because I'm stuck on something. I'd be like,
Right.
I think the door was the main thing where you kind of had to use the spell on the door, and I'd sometimes sit there logged out of the game just thinking about it, just like, how am I meant to do this? And I think that's an experience you don't really get in gaming too much.
Yeah, I
These
think
days.
that's kind of like a lot of the satisfaction of old school RuneScape and just RuneScape in general and
Mm,
MMOs when they're done well, I feel, is that idea of being able to log off and then always having that game in the back of your head, theory crafting.
yeah,
I always say that like a connection with a game forms outside of you playing it, right? Like when you're thinking
yeah,
about doing it,
100%.
you're theorizing all the different things. And I think what I love about old school is that even if you're following guides, there's still a lot of elements of the game that you're constantly thinking about, right? Something I always
Yes,
talk
exactly.
about.
Yeah,
I'm doing like, let's say, a PVM thing or a skilling thing. I'm always thinking like, okay, I can look at the guide for this. I can see what people are bringing, but I don't have all of this stuff, especially not as an Iron Man.
yeah,
So I'm still putting together my inventory. That management aspect of the game is really like a crucial element. Not a lot of people talk about. It's like, how are you forming your inventory to fit the encounter that you're trying to do, and how does that
yeah,
change with what you get and with what you like actually learn from the encounter itself, like what items are you bringing. And even just seeing your videos, the things you bring for a quest have changed over time when you've kind of started to understand all the different things you may
yeah,
need.
exactly.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah, it's
cool.
really interesting. It's really cool. And yeah, just going back to your point about kind of that thought process outside of the game, I think it is the true kind of definition of a game that's kind of got you, I guess. And like for me, it's like the definition of like a good game is that ones where, like you say, I think if you're playing RuneScape with guides, which is the majority of players, it's not going to be potentially going to be quests, but it is that other stuff. It's like bossing. It's the things you get excited about and you're thinking about, like you can't wait to go and do sort of thing. You've been preparing for a challenge or something like that, whether it be a boss or even just a skilling grind, and you're kind of thinking about it outside of the time that you're playing it, and you're like, I just can't wait to kind of jump back in and take on that challenge and complete it, and you have that satisfaction. It does kind of expand outside of the time that you're actually sitting there playing it.
For sure. And definitely. And I think to touch on like the things that are really appealing about your kind of content, the vibe of your videos and stuff. Everybody always says like it's like nostalgia, right? Like I don't have
Mm,
nostalgia towards old school, right? I haven't played it back in the day.
mm,
And there was elements of nostalgia that I just gain like vicariously. It's a very old school looking and feeling game, so that kind of gives me nostalgia towards an era more so than like a specific thing in a video game.
yeah,
But I will say that while nostalgia is definitely like an entry point, and I always say this about everything, I think the real thing that really speaks to people is just the satisfaction of like just solving something. And I think that
mm,
because old school RuneScape content, the creation scene is so interesting, but also it's very like people are really finding new niches and trying to find new niches within it, right? Like all the different chunk men and like the specific
yeah,
restricted ones, all that kind of stuff. And I think that the satisfaction of that content stems very similar or from a similar place to the satisfaction of your content, where it's just finding satisfaction in achieving something that otherwise would be kind of who cares, like, oh, you got like
yeah,
a specific item that is like 33 coins on the grand exchange, but for you it's like game changing, right? Finding,
yeah,
I think it was you, right, who during the nature spirit quest, I want to say, you had to find the Valencia moss. Was that
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that was like a disaster, right? Because that item is just, where do you even look for that? You can
Yeah.
obviously look it up on a guide, and it's a meaningless item for most players. But for you specifically, finding that aha moment for that is just such a momentous occasion, such a journey. And people, I think, watching it get the same satisfaction from watching you find that finally. You did find that, right? I'm not crazy. You did
Yeah.
find,
Yeah.
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 I'm remembering that.
Yeah.
The reason I'm confusing it's because Mad Susan, in his most recent video, I'm also watching his Unguided series, also got the Valencia moss, and I'm like, I don't know how he's gonna find
Oh,
this shit.
really?
Like, it's a GG. I don't know. We'll see. But regardless, the satisfaction of seeing you achieve that is similar to the satisfaction of watching a chunkman, cross off an immense task, right? Like with Josh
Yeah.
right now, he's doing his draconic visage stuff. Like, when he gets that item is 1.5 million gold in the grand exchange. It's not the end of the whatever, but for him, it's like, that's the moment, that's the thing.
Yeah. I think
um yeah.
that's definitely the beauty of. I think for me, yeah, I think that's the beauty of the content creation scene for sure, and I think that then translates to people playing the game. Like, you're on your own journey. Like, I think that's one of the reasons I actually started this series, and one of the reasons I got back into playing again was because I had a main before this. I'd never played an Iron Man, and I kind of just didn't know what to do. I was kind of logging in and not really sure what to do, because I kind of felt like if I wasn't doing things efficiently, then what's the point in doing anything at all?
Yeah.
Which is a really weird, backwards way of thinking, but I think quite a lot of people resonate a bit with that. Like, this idea, you kind of, oh, I want to try and do this boss. Well, if I want to do this boss, then I need all this gear, because then I want to do it efficiently, and I've got to learn the best strategy to do it. And then I kind of can't be bothered to do all that. So it's like, and then you just kind of stand there in the bank for like half an hour, and then you should log off. And that's the experience I had until this was like, well, I've set my own limitations now. So everything's relative to, it's almost like playing a single player game in a way, in a weird sense, even though it's an MMO. It's like, this item to me, if I can achieve it, is like getting something incredible on a main account that's worth 1 billion GP or something, like a twisted bow or something like that. Like, because if I can't get it, then my journey is over, in a sense. And that will be like that for Josh, in the sense of, like, he's hunting for that, and this is his kind of thing that he needs. It's so massive for him because he's been at it for so long that it separates it from what that item actually is and what it's used for. It's like, this is his own journey. He set his limitations up, so now that's what he needs to do. And it's like you say, I think with things like Swamp Legs and stuff like that, that kind of set that scene up a little bit, in a sense of the limitations you put around yourself just really, like, change the game that you're playing, for you to kind of experience things for items that might be mundane, because within the restrictions you put on yourself, it is no longer mundane. It is crucial. You need it in a really weird way, but if you don't get it, then you can't progress with your journey. And I think it's the game that allows us to do that. And I think it's great that the content creation scene is kind of, I guess, unearthed it in a way, and allow people to, like, have their own journeys now. And probably, like, there's probably tons of people that just play their own way, and they're in their own little grinds, and they're doing their own things, where items become something that they're not normally, which I just think is really cool.
That's what I love about the Iron Man game mode, right? Like, what you're doing, what Chunkmen are doing, what the area restricted Snowflake accounts are doing, they're all just kind of creating Iron Man with more restrictions, in that, like, the coolest thing about Iron Man, and this kind of extends to the game in general, I always call, like, while Old School RuneScape and RuneScape, they're sandbox games. They're not like traditional sandboxes like Minecraft or some of the older sandbox MMOs. They are kind of like, have a lot of different paths, but I call them more like curated sandboxes. Like Old School RuneScape is more of a curated sandbox, where the content is very deliberately created and intentionally created to pull you in different directions. The paths that people create are player determined, but at the end of the day, they're developer created, right? They're developer kind of like paved. And that's what makes it so interesting, where by limiting yourself in some ways, you're creating a new path out of all the different ones that are currently available for yourself. And from doing that, you find like more value or meaning in the paths that you do have available. And that's a really unique thing to Old School RuneScape content creation. I come from a WoW scene. I didn't create content really for WoW, but I come from a WoW scene, and the WoW content creation scene is something I've always, had in mind, because that's the game I was playing a lot. It's a very different beast, Old School RuneScape, very different. Just in the kinds of content being created. In World of Warcraft, I always say there's three kinds of content. There's like news, there's
Mm,
guides, and then there's like a very narrow sliver for lore. There's not really a lot of space
mm,
for creativity in that scene because it's such a linear kind of straightforward game. Like there's a lot of complexity and nuance to the combat, but there's not a lot of kind of openness with what you do and how you do it. Classic WoW was the
yeah.
most of that, right? And I believe, did you say that you played a little bit of Classic WoW?
A very, very small amount of classic, mostly retail that I've played.
Okay, mostly retail, right? I'm flipping them then. I think like retail is a very straightforward kind of game, especially
Yeah.
nowadays. I think you told me you played back in Miss Pandaria, right?
Yeah, Mr. Pandaria, and then I returned for Dragonflight and played
Mm.
quite a bit in Dragonflight. Um, and yeah, that's kind of my experience with
Yeah,
it.
you're just kind of beelining to the end game and then just kind of doing like a
Yeah,
little
and
bit
that's kind
there.
of, I think that's kind of what like WoW is. I think I enjoy World of Warcraft. I really do. Like, I think the combat and for me, like, kind of getting into mythic dungeons and stuff in Dragonflight is kind of where I found the enjoyment. And learning those kind of team-based activities. I didn't do too much raids. I did do a bit of raiding, but I kind of really got into mythic dungeons and like the grinding for kind of mythic rating, going higher keys and learning the tactics and things. Like, I really enjoyed that, but in a weird way, like if I actually take a step back now, I have a kind of an emotional attachment to my character that I played, but outside of that and the class that it was and the kind of gear that I kind of dressed my guy up in, it wasn't too MMO-y, I guess, if that makes sense. Like the actual content I was doing was primarily just dungeon crawling, which it's a part of MMOs, but I could take that out. I could just take the MMO, sorry, I could just take the dungeons element out, the mythic side of things, and just play that, and that would have been fine for me. Um, it's 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 weird in the sense that because that's what I feel like. Well, WoW is now billed to me as like it's a seasonal thing. It's like
Yeah.
there's a new DLC comes out, so now I'm going to go and play it. But hold up, all my gear is now worthless, so I have to start again, and that's fine. Like it is a fine thing, but I think there's only so many times I can do that until I'm just like, well, I now need to give it 5 years until I come back. Like, and that's kind of what I did. Like, Pandaria was when I started, didn't get into Mythic at that point. I don't even know if it existed at that point. And then yeah, did Dragonflight, came back, and that was I don't know how many years after that was. And then that's when I kind of got into Mythic. And then I tried to get back into it with the new expansion that came out, and just didn't really care as much. I think just don't know really why. And I was just like, oh, I'm probably gonna have to leave this for another 3 or 4 years until I kind of decide to maybe give it another run and actually enjoy it again. Because it's like very temporal. It's like you're working towards something for a couple of months, and in those months it's fine. But if you come back to it, then you do start from scratch again, even though you're not technically starting from scratch again. Whereas RuneScape, you just come back to it, and items that were released in 2004 are still viable to be used in today's game. Like, and some of them are massively so. So it's very different in my eyes, in terms of the way that I've kind of played it and enjoyed it. But to me, it's purely kind of billed as a cyclical structure of returning every now and then, and then deciding if I'm going to stick around, maybe give it a couple of days, maybe end up playing for 3 weeks, and then that's about it.
Yeah, I think that that's also my takeaway with WoW. I played for a long time and I quit in Dragonflight, but I played around until the first like major content patch of Dragonflight, which was the second raid. And I was like almost there on the final boss of the mythic progression there in that raid. And I sat back
Mm,
and I'm like, the guild leader sent out all the, I don't know if you know weak auras, but he sent out all these
yeah,
weak
yeah,
aura packs. You need to use this, and this is what you can't use, and this is how you use it. And I'm just sitting there like, I'm doing this for the items. Loot is a big driving motivator. Power progression and WoW is like the only
yeah,
driving motivator really. And I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, I'm doing this for items that I already have, but they're like 7 item levels higher, and I'm gonna sit here on this boss for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and 6 to 9 hours of my weekend is going to be made up of just dying to this boss for the same item I already have, but slightly better. And in
yeah.
2 months, I'm not even going to use that item anymore. What am I doing? And there was a time where I think mythic rating and just hardcore, or not hardcore, but like harder rating in WoW had more allure to it because that was where you got your tier sets from. And tier sets
Mm.
are very game changing and fun and satisfying, and they were a huge driving motivator to actually do raids. Nowadays, you can get them from doing other stuff. There was a time where even in a more minor sense, doing the hardest raid content would reward you with a very unique looking set of gear, like a visually
Right.
upgraded version of an existing tier set, like in Legion and BFA had that. And I'm like, okay, it's not ideal. I don't really care that much for cosmetics, but at least that's a signifier of my time spent and my
Yeah.
achievement. It feels like it has some value, and it's going to retain that for at least a little bit, at least for the rest of the expansion. But then they removed that. Now they're just a recolor, and those recolors are
Right.
obtainable anywhere. So I'm like, okay, so what's the point of doing
Yeah.
by far the hardest content in the game? Like mythic rating to me is just so beyond anything else difficulty wise. It's like months and months and months through just this content until the next one releases. And why, right? Like, well, the
Yeah.
final boss has a 1 in 10 chance of giving you a mount. There's like a million mounts in the game. No one even knows what this one looks like. No one's going to recognize that. Um, and it's only when you're actually using it. There's a title, which there's, again, millions of them in the game. Who cares? And an
Yeah.
achievement, which is like, what are you going to link that to someone? Be like, look at me? It's just such a minor reward for such a major time investment in such a flitting seasonal game. Why?
I think that's it. I think
Yeah.
it's the seasonal like kind of aspect of it that kind of makes me feel like it's not redundant to everyone, right? But I think it's hard for me to maintain an attention span for something that is so seasonal because going back to like the idea of RuneScape being like you create your own journeys and things are kind of relevant to you. You can step back and say the same thing about World of Warcraft in a sense. It's like I just want to try and do a mythic raid this season or whatever. And you can do that for yourself, but I think the thing for me is, and the reason that maybe why it doesn't push, like I've had that experience of doing, I don't know, Legends Quest Unguided, whatever. That's the thing I've done now. It's done on my account. It's always going to have been done. Like if I go back to my account, it's still on there. It's still that thing is completed. That was the thing for me. I don't know. There's something about the idea of it being every DLC just comes out and it's the same kind of treadmill, I guess, of like the same kind of content, getting to that point of trying to do the mythic raid. Unless you're like really into just doing every single one that comes out, I feel like if you fall off at any point, it's really hard to get back into it because that's when you realize you're kind of like, what's the point? It's when you've fallen
Yeah.
off. Like, I think I could imagine having played Classic very briefly, just talking about 2 or 3 hours. I mean, the main difference I realized was how you actually like you look at the items that you get, you look at the weapons that you get, you look at the skills that you have, and each kind of battle with an NPC is actually like a quite a significant battle. Whereas in retail, at this point, you're kind of just plowing through enemies. You're getting tons of gear thrown at you that you just click on. Then 2 levels later, or 50 quests later, you get another piece of gear. You switch it out. I think the difference between me playing RuneScape and me playing WoW is that when I started playing WoW, it was at a point where it was already kind of in that cycle at Pandaria, where
Yeah.
it was like almost impossible for me to start kind of thinking of it from a perspective of like these weapons actually mean something or they matter to me. Like I remember watching someone like Asmongold, like when Pandaria came out or something, and he'd be
Yeah.
talking about classic weapons or stuff. And occasionally I'll look at like a lore video from someone these days, and they'll be talking about like the best or like the most iconic weapons in WoW. And like I didn't even realize that people knew the names of weapons in WoW because I didn't, because I just didn't think that was how the game worked. But it clearly was at one point. And there's still to an element there is to this day. Like when I did Dragonflight, I kind of knew the name of a couple of the trinkets that were popular at the time. And I was like, oh, actually, I've sort of got, for the first time in my life, I've got that feeling of like what I have on RuneScape, where you just know so many of the items because they're so iconic, like the whip or
Yeah.
whatever. Like there's just so much to it.
Yeah, I completely agree, right? It's something I've always maintained. And to piggyback off the seasonal conversation, something I think I kind of came out or came to understand, or I guess not, I don't want to say it's like definitive, but it's just an opinion that I have that I think is well reasoned, that I figured out like a couple videos ago from a video when I was scripting it called What WoW Can Learn from OSRS, is that World of Warcraft, it's very much like an ARPG. like Diablo, like Path of Exile,
Mm,
like Last Epoch, all these games where they're all very seasonal, they're very short form, they operate seasonally, and it's all about just this huge power progression that your character
yeah.
goes in, and you can play something different every season, different class, different spec, whatever. And that works. That works really well for a great ARPG, right? I've been this past weekend playing Path of Exile 2 nonstop, and
Mm,
it's incredible the power progression in that game, how much you think about the individual items and how much impact they have on your character. But with World of Warcraft, there's just something missing because I agree with you. The gameplay with WoW is the best in my opinion for MMOs. Like the class design's incredible, the
mm,
spec design's incredible, the actual moment to moment feel of playing the game is really great. But it's the systems surrounding it that either are bloated or so shallow. Like gearing and itemization is something I'm so critical of. You have no idea because this is the first time you and I have a proper voice conversation, but every one of my friends can vouch for me. For the past like 5 years I've been nonstop ranting and raving about how boring the itemization is in WoW, how
yeah.
unbelievably just it's four secondary stats and primary stats which you only need one of, and it's like that's it, and they all roundabout do the same thing: increase your damage by X
Yeah.
amount, whatever. It's so it makes itemizing easy, right? In that, like, oh, I got a higher item level and it's generally better. I got a
Yeah.
higher thing, whatever, generally better. But it removes so much identity from individual items, and this is due to the how they
Yeah.
scale. They're all invented to scale infinitely with Mythic Plus and dungeons and raids, with having all these different difficulties, same items, different difficulty scales. And it gets so dry getting the same exact
Yeah.
sword that I've been getting in like 8 years ago in Legion again today. But just like have a different name, maybe a recolored model or a different model or
Yeah.
whatever.
I completely agree. They
Yeah.
just they lose them. Like they lose what makes them like actually interesting, in my opinion. Like I said, I didn't even realize that WoW had items that people actually knew of, like in that sort of same way that you do in RuneScape,
Yeah.
because they just don't have the emotional value to it. I have I even commented this actually, I think, on one of your videos. Was I have
Mhm.
this I think one of my biggest pet peeves is World of Warcraft. Um and even some of the games like Path of Exile, even too recently. I played it a lot on release, and I'm started playing again actually pretty recently too.
PoE
Um
2? You're saying PoE
yeah,
2?
yeah,
Oh, cool.
yeah. But the thing that bugs me is, and the thing that I kind of find myself actually genuinely like, I'm playing it and I'm enjoying the gameplay, but the thing that I actually find myself logging off for, or not logging back on for, maybe is a better way of saying it, is the fact that um, transmog is almost like ruining that item
Yes.
identity as well. Like
Definitely.
it's, I just so in PoE2, I might be wrong about this because I think I put maybe about 60 hours into the game, 70 hours, like kind of last Christmas when it came out, and but then I looked. I was playing again literally like a week ago, and I looked at the shop and I was like, oh, "This is where all the cool shit is. Like, this is where the cool items are." And I'm like, monetization of games is a whole nother conversation that I don't know the answer for. But like, I just really think it sucks the personality out of a game when you get a cool. Well, for starters, in some games you just don't get cool items because it's all in the shop, or they're not geared to kind of like look a certain way, or it's just like, yeah, you get a drop for a weapon and it just looks like shit, and it always looks like shit. And like, I had a character, I think I got it up to level, what's the level cap in PoE2? I think I got it to like
Uh
46 or 56 or something like
yeah,
that. I
I
don't know what
think
it is
I
now.
see. This weekend is when I was my first time ever playing PoE 2. So
Oh really?
I've been blasting. I've been it's so I think I'm level 78 now. So I've been
Right,
playing a
okay.
lot. But it's like there's a they changed the way the campaign works. So now it's like you finished Act 4, you do some of the the prologue to that a little bit, and you're like
Oh,
level
okay.
like 60, 65, and then you go into mapping, and then you're just at like 70, the leveling becomes incredibly long, kind of like hitting 92 in RuneScape.
Right.
And at that point you're just getting kind of like not aesthetic levels, but like just it takes longer to level up after that.
Yeah.
So I think by the end of the campaign, originally it was like, yeah, like 50 or 60 or something like that.
Yeah, because I think when I first started, there was only 3 acts, and you do those three, and then you go back to Act 1, you start again, going kind of like through like almost like a harder version of the game. But either way,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
kind of looked
Cruel.
at
Yeah, I
my
remember
character
that.
list. Yeah, I looked back at my character list when I logged back on like a week ago, and I looked at I think I had a sorceress or a mage or whatever, um, and it looked like shit. Like the
Yeah.
character looked like shit, and it wasn't an end game character in any way. But it wasn't like I hadn't put any time in. I'd put in like 50 hours, maybe 40 hours into that one character. That might be a slight exaggeration. I can't remember exactly how long I would have played it for, but it was more than 25 hours, I reckon, into this one character. And I just thought, why does it look so bad still? Like, I'd love a couple of cool items that kind of stand out and make me think, yeah, this is cool. This was worth it. This was like a really cool moment when I got this one thing. Whereas I think I have I have this. I really like when you get those cool bits of gear. This is a complete topic change in terms of the game that we're talking about, but I don't know if you've ever played Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Any of the Odyssey. I played Odyssey, and if you've ever played Valhalla.
Yeah.
Um,
I played Origins Odyssey. I didn't play Valhalla though. But I
right, yeah.
obviously know
So
about it.
I think whichever one is set in Greece, I played that one quite a lot.
Odyssey, I believe.
That's Odyssey, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I loved getting gear in that game because you get it all the time. Like you just go and kill some stuff, and you just get like a weapon that you've not seen before, or like an orange spear or something. And you're like, oh, this is cool. I've not seen this before. And
Yeah.
they just like chuck in gear at you. And I kind of really like that progression system of just like getting loads of stuff and like getting a new weapon and trying it out and being like, oh, this is a cool upgrade. Oh, but it's a different type of weapon to the what I was using. Well, it's now I'll try that one for a bit, and then you get another one that's like a warhammer or something. You try that one for a bit. Whereas and then I played Valhalla, and I was like so excited to play it because like I
Yeah, they
quite
gutted the
enjoy.
itemization in that game. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I know
Honestly,
for a fact, yeah.
yeah, and like I was super excited to play it because the setting is one that I'm like even more historically interested in than I was about ancient Greece. Like ancient kind of Britain is like just really cool. And I was like, this is gonna be great, and I was so fucking bored. I mean, I was just like, I didn't get any of those hits. I think I played for maybe like 10 hours, and all I was getting was like gold bars, if I remember correctly, and I had
Yeah,
like a
like
couple of
currencies.
weapons, but
Yeah.
yeah, like different currencies and stuff, and I just wasn't kind of giving me that hit that I like.
Yeah, you and I are
So
totally aligned. We're totally aligned in this regard, I think. I think that I'm very much like driven by, I'm not driven just by aesthetics, but more so just like the value attached to that, right? Like if you get a really cool
yeah,
item that looks cool and it's also really good, that is so much more satisfying than getting like the same exact item you've been getting, but now it has good stats on it. And
100%.
I agree with you about Path of Exile, although I will give them credit where every unique in this free to play game, which is surprising. It's going to be free to play, I should say, when it comes out. Every unique has a unique model, which is unique, no
Mm,
pun intended, compared to games like Diablo 4, where there are uniques that use like reuse models and stuff, even though they're called uniques. And that's a full priced game with a paid,
yeah,
expansions and paid season passes or whatever, battle passes.
yeah, yeah.
So I'll give
That
them
is true.
credit
That's a
there,
really good
but
point.
still, I look at my monk right now in Path of Exile. He looks like the same he's looked since level 30. Really, maybe
Yeah,
some pieces change, but yeah, I agree with you. I wish there was a more of a push there. Obviously, it's free to play, so I'm kind of giving them some leniency, even though I would always prefer to pay if it means getting more of that. I'm always in favor of that. That's why I always believe in
yeah, same.
subscription models for MMOs rather than like a cosmetic driven kind of buy to play model. I think that's the main thing that really makes me bounce off of games like Guild Wars 2. If you've ever played that MMO, it's very horizontal in its progression. It's very much not power scale driven. It's a lot
Mm,
more just horizontal. You're upgrading your mounts, which have a unique system. You're getting all these like cosmetic items and gear pieces and stuff. But it's a buy to play game, and the vast majority of the coolest shit in that game comes from the cash shop. And someone's going to
yeah,
tell you like, "Oh, well, you can earn the gold and then transfer it to the cash shop currency and buy it that way." But I'm like, doesn't mean anything to me, right? Like you can just
yeah,
buy
because
it from
it's
the
the way
cash
you
shop.
achieve it.
Yeah,
It's the way you
exactly.
achieve it as well. It's like you want to be able to get some gear from like a really cool monster. If there's a boss in the game that drops like a really cool sword, and the sword is like part of that monster's tail or whatever, like little things like that that kind of give it a bit more meaning. That's the kind of things that I really enjoy. Like, and that's one of the reasons that RuneScape I think just has this kind of hold on me in a sense of like, I mean, there's a lot of new content coming out that obviously I can't look at kind of updates for, which is interesting. So there's a lot of stuff that I see people walking around it. I'm like, where the fuck, what is that? But like, even still, I know that if they're equipped in it, then they have it. I know it sounds really ridiculous, but it's like they have it. That's their item that is really cool looking, but also they are using it for a specific purpose. Like it's a really interesting one where I think for me, yeah, like I'm really, I've just decided that I'm really against transmog. Like I think it's really killed like my kind of love for certain games. Like even RS3, like I know that they're doing some stuff at the moment, trialing like no transmog and stuff like that. I think, and a bunch of things to try and kind of save that game a little bit. And I think that's a really cool idea because for me, I played RS3 maybe like 3-4 years ago for a bit, and the thing that I just again kind of fell out of it was because you see people walking around. I think one of the most charming things for me, having played RuneScape as a kid, and even you would have had this maybe playing WoW at certain times, is you see someone with something and you're like, wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then they tell you that it's like a really powerful weapon and it's something that you just try to achieve. Like I remember seeing someone with a crystal bow and full black D hide and a Robin Hood hat. And I was young and I was like, oh my word, I need this. Like I just need the crystal bow. It looks so, I want black D hide. Like I need to look like this person. And they were like that because they were training range and they had the gear on, but those items were the cosmetic was tied to the use of them. It's not like in RuneScape 3 where you log on, you see someone walking around with like flaming wings on their back, and you're like, well, yeah, that does look cool, but it doesn't mean anything to me because you've just bought that off the shop, or you've just got it off the shop, or the spinning wheel, or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Like,
for sure. I think like, the delineation here is that like one item is makes you want to play the game more. The other item doesn't influence that at all, right? Because you're not
yeah,
going to need to play the game more to just buy it off the cash shop. You can just buy it off the cash shop. While the other like more aspirational gear that you're talking about is like, oh, I want that, so I'm going to invest more time. That's a reason to invest more
yeah,
time into the game. And I think, and I always point this out when because I also absolutely hate transmog. Like, and playing classic is actually what really made me realize that how much I hate it is like having that ability to just look at what someone's wearing and determine that, oh, that's the thing I want. This guy's a badass. Look
yeah,
how cool is this guy. Like, he's done all the hardest stuff. That's sick. That not only motivates me to pursue that, but it in turn also motivates him to pursue that or continue doing so. Because yeah,
yeah,
that's that cyclical loop of being able to work hard for something and then being recognized for the hard work you do. It's kind of like
yeah,
content creation in
absolutely.
that way, Um,
Yeah, and like I just quickly on that last point,
mhm.
it's interesting because I just thought of it because I've funny enough, my next video coming out in like a week or so is actually on a set of items or a set of armor that is almost like the kind of transmog of RuneScape, which is Fashionscape, right? Which in the
Yeah.
sense of like it's white knight armor that I don't know if you if kind of ever dabbled in getting it, but
Mhm.
it's
Well,
something I saw as a kid. Sorry.
white knight armor being like are you talking about proselyte and like all that stuff, or are you talking like full like white knight armor?
White, yeah, just
Yeah,
white
I've
armor.
never
Yeah, the
had
ones
that.
exactly. So that's
Yeah.
like one that I remember again seeing as a kid, and bit like it's as far as I know, it's kind of practically useless. Like it's not as good as any other armor out there. There's so much better armor out there, but it looks really cool. And
Yeah.
it's like you just have to kill black knights to get it. Like you have to kill like thousands of black knights to get it, because you then get access to a shop where you can then buy it. And I remember seeing this when I was younger, and and seeing someone wearing it, and they weren't wearing it for training in that sense. They were wearing it for like Fashionscape, and that's another thing. It's like there is an element of like of cosmetic, it's this whole kind of subculture of like making your character look cool in a sense of like it doesn't always need to be related to the the purpose of the armor, but or the purpose of the gear that you're wearing, but it could just look cool. But at least if I see that person wearing it, I know they're actually wearing it, and I know that they got it in a certain way. So, for example, seeing that person in white armor, after a couple of years, I realized what had done to get it, and I knew they were wearing white armor, and it was like really cool moment. And like
Right.
you see like a skiller these days, like a level 3 who's got like a woodcutting skill cape. It's like that's a cool moment. They're wearing a woodcutting skill cape because they have that, and they're level 3. Like there's little things like that where it's like it doesn't always have to even be the most powerful thing, but it's like you see someone wearing something, they've done something cool to get whatever they're wearing, or you just know they're in that gear. And for me, that's like a really important aspect of of a multiplayer game like this, even non-multiplayer games as well, to be fair, but especially in like multiplayer games.
So on the topic of, kind of cosmetic stuff and just general the rags to riches of the RPG, that's kind of something that's always been something I love about video games. It's probably the main reason, or one of the main reasons, I've always found myself gravitating to RPGs of any kind. And it's also why I think RPGs are the most influential game genre in the world. I think that the reason for this is because you have this rags to riches story, the progression path of the traditional RPG, and now you've seen that transposed onto games of all kinds. Something I kind of saw is, for example, I'm a car guy, so I played a lot of Need for Speed when I was younger, and the games that really took off in that genre and also in that franchise are games that employ a lot of RPG progression. You start out with like a busted up Honda Civic, and then you upgrade it. You find all these like unique items for it. You win races, you earn money to buy upgrades, you customize it, and it becomes your own. And then you upgrade to your next vehicle, the next one, and you end the game with a $300,000 Lamborghini. It's that rags to riches of the RPG. Another game that I feel like does this, or just a whole genre that has begun doing this, is the shooters. Right, multiplayer shooters have kind of employed a very similar kind of thing. This sandbox of weaponry you have in Call of Duty is very similar to the sandbox that opens up to you once you've progressed in an RPG, right? You start out with no camos, no attachments, and the more you use something, the more you level up, the more you earn those things. I think people that play games are inherently drawn to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's probably like the most satisfying thing. I think I find myself sometimes playing games and thinking back to games like this is one of the roguish shouts ever, but like you might never have played it, but there's a game where you used to like take a penguin and just like fling it in a little slingshot and it would go a certain distance, and like you'd have to like measure how far. It was like a mini clip game.
Oh, okay, mini clip classic, honestly.
Yeah, and then you'd buy it certain things, and then you'd buy it some wings so it'd fly a little bit further, or you'd buy it some sort of boost so it'd go a bit further. It's like the most basic form of like that hit of just like, I bought this thing, I've spent enough gold, I've earned this to then buy an upgrade to then mean that I can do better. And it's exactly the same thing like you say with like Call of Duty. Like sometimes it's cosmetic in the form of a camo, or sometimes it's like, I've used this gun for 150 kills and now I get a grip on it, which means the recoil is going to go down or something. And Need for Speed as well. Like the first time you put neon lights on a car, like that little underglow is like, this is a really cool moment, and you stick a spoiler on it or whatever. And you're like, get a better engine and you can go however much faster. Like those are just like those moments that kind of keep you coming back for more, and also allow the replayability as well. Like you can go through and do a different journey if there's options of choice.
Exactly.
It allows you to replay it, which I think the whole roguelike genre is essentially built on, right? It's like you do something, we'll kind of cut the story down, but we'll give you all this choice in the world so that your build feels entirely different, and the actual gameplay loop is just doing it over and over again, like because you can just go down so many different routes. I think it's like probably the most enjoyable thing in gaming, hence why I think, just going back to the Assassin's Creed Valhalla thing, is like I think so much of it felt stripped back. Like I said, the gear progression felt non-existent. Like everything felt slow. And if you're not like hitting me as frequently as I'm used to or expecting, I'm going to get bored because I don't feel like I'm progressing here. Like maybe I'm getting my way through the story, but if that's slow as well, then I'm just not feeling like I'm really kind of progressing too much, which
or barely
is
even
going to hurt
playing
in the long run.
Yeah, exactly.
Barely even playing. Like, what am I doing here? I
think that, progression is really interesting, like threading the needle between creating impactful items and giving you enough of them to like pace out your experience, right? It's a game like Retail WoW where I feel like there's no impactful items anymore. It gives you the same item over and over and over again, and that stops having value. While in Classic WoW, you get items slower, but each item has its own unique, very much unique impact, but also unique modifiers to the way it works. Something I really love about Classic WoW, that just slowly got stripped away until they completely removed it in Cataclysm, is like weapon speeds. That's an example. In Classic WoW, I played a hunter, and the classes in Classic are very simple to play, very simple, but there are certain like unique things you can do with them to quote unquote min max the way you play. And one of the things for hunters is you're trying to thread an ability between every auto attack, and you would have this little add-on
Right.
that showcases the next time you auto attack. So you're kind of like really micromanaging the way you're moving, because there's also a dead zone. So when a mob's right next
Mm.
to you, you can't attack them with your bow, which is most of your damage. So you're kind of trying to kite backwards, attack during the like the tick, that you can, and then moving back, attacking, slowing them, moving
Yeah.
back, and this made every single weapon that has a unique attack speed attached to it feel different, right? You'd get a
Yeah.
bow that's really, really fast, and now suddenly your kiting is more complicated and fast paced.
Yeah.
Or you can have a crossbow that's like a 4-second attack speed, is really beefy, hits really hard, but you're kind of more relaxed in how long you can spend your time running around. That even just that really minor thing added so much identity to every individual weapon in the game. And that's not even
Yeah.
touching on the unique stats and itemization. I thoroughly believe that it was an accident. Like Blizzard did not know their own like itemization in the game too well when they were developing it. So that's what made certain items incredibly powerful and other ones incredibly bad. But
Mm.
you kind of need that to create like the outliers, because the outliers is what people remember. People remember the really good thing, the really, really kind of signpost, like this is what I want. This is the legendary weapon. This is my best in
Yeah.
slot for X, Y, and Z reason. And they go for that. If every single thing is the same, or generally within 3 to 5% of it, you don't have outliers and you don't have things to really strive to earn
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah. I think, and even just going back to the classic example is, for me, as I kind of mentioned before, like with the massive difference between retail and classic was that the NPC like fights were just so much harder in classic. And also I didn't. It sounds ridiculous now I think back on it, but if I go back to my first experience with retail, and obviously this is in Pandaria, so it's quite a way into it. So, I didn't realize that auto attacks were even really a part of your damage profile. Like, depending on what class you play, it's going to be less so, more so. But like, it's so ability heavy, right? But whereas your classic, especially in the early game, like I remember because I actually played for the first sort of 3-4 hours, kind of without guides because I just wanted to experience it. So I was doing a similar sort of thing, and I was playing a rogue, and I remember that upgrade of my first daggers because I was like, oh my god, I'm doing so much more damage. Like, it's ridiculous. And I noticed it, and I was looking at the stats, and it was like the damage profile was like from 2 to 7 to up to like 5 to 13 or something. And I'd see a 13, I'd hit a 13 with my auto attack, and I'd be like, whoa, that's massive. Or I'd hit a crit, and I'd be like, oh my word, like. And then I remember getting swords instead of daggers, and then being a bit slower, but the hits that were flying off were massive, and like, and that's just auto attacks. Like it's just a completely different pace, but it felt so much more impactful, even though it was slower. Like it was a slower gameplay, but it was so much more impactful than retail, which it just kind of blurs into like a mush of like, I don't even care. I've looked up a rotation, or even if I haven't looked up a rotation, I'm just spamming my abilities. Everything dies really quickly, and I don't, unless I'm going to the nth degree of mythic dungeons and stuff where I have like studied my rotation, and all I'm looking at now is a damage meter in the bottom right hand corner of my screen to see if I'm beating someone else in a dungeon or that sort of thing, which is like in its own way I guess the sort of element of satisfaction out of that. But I don't care about any of the items I'm wearing as long as I'm just doing the most damage. But
Yeah,
it doesn't feel the same way. It
I
doesn't
th-
feel the same as kind
retail
of
is
like classic does.
retail is very fast paced. I think something that is a pretty reasonable criticism of the retail system, as much as I do love the moment to moment of retail, while like the combat. I think one of my main criticisms of it, at least from a systemic standpoint, is just how much stuff is like offloaded to passive effects that have very
Mm,
minimal like immediate effect like on the way you play, but have a huge effect on your output. So you can look at your damage breakdown in retail, and there's like 30 spells or damage types that you weren't even aware you were doing, but are just kind of
yeah,
backloaded into some ability or some interaction that you weren't even privy to. You don't even need to be knowledgeable about those to to just do your rotation well. In
yeah,
classic, everything is stripped back, it's much slower, so you can appreciate every individual hit and the individual upgrades that stem from hitting harder. I think that RuneScape is similar, right? Like you look at the difference in power between two items in RuneScape, and barring some very huge upgrades you can have, like a rune simi to a dragon simi, usually they're very minor. like 1 or 2 max hits. But they're still noticeable. The accuracy increase is noticeable. The max hit increase is noticeable because you're looking and paying attention at every single hit. So you're kind of like
Yeah.
processing you're processing more incremental changes than you would
Yeah.
in like retail, which, as you said, you're looking at the damage meters. But what is the difference of 2% damage increase when you're doing, 3 million DPS? Now you're doing what, 3.02 million DPS? Like, who
Yeah.
cares, I think that it's so hard to kind of connect to that power scale, I guess. And even if
Yeah.
they lower the numbers, it's at the end of the day, you're still flying off all these unique passive effects that you might not be super aware
That's
of.
what I mean. I don't know how they solve that issue for retail. I don't think they do, to be fair, because it would require a completely different kind of. I think the thing is like, can they I guess another thing is like, can they like take what's with the classic? Because I started playing again with the what they call anniversary servers. I think it was that
Yeah.
they dropped in like 6 months ago. Maybe they banned them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they've released classic like 5 years ago, 5 years ago, or something like that. So like, and then that's just going down the same path because I think that's at Pandaria now. Like,
Yeah.
I think the way that I don't really know what they're doing, to be honest, because like they've just kind of like released classic, but the reason that old school is different to RS3 is because it's then become its own game. Like, yes, it started on the same 2007 server, but they very specifically, after realizing that this is what people wanted, they were like, okay, well, let's not just go down the same route and do exactly the same thing as RS3 because that clearly didn't end so well. So like, let's start polling things, try new content, keep it the same as it is, like kind of the vibe of it needs to be the same. Like, and that's why it's successful now. Like, I don't know the data for kind of classic, the one that's at Pandaria, but or I don't even know the progression path this time, so I could be talking my arse here, to be fair. But if it is just kind of going through the same DLCs, like, I don't know, like, isn't that just going to end up being the same game? Like,
Yeah.
I've heard things about classic, kind of classic plus, I think it's called, or something like that,
Yeah.
like where
Yeah.
they kind of change it and stuff. So maybe that's the answer. But I think holding on to that feeling of classic, because yeah, I have no nostalgia associated with classic WoW, but I felt a sense of real enjoyment and progression when playing classic very briefly. And the only reason I actually stopped was because I was recording part of it to see if there was something in there in terms of like a kind of a play on like an unguided WoW classic adventure. And I kind of decided against it. And so that's kind of when I stopped. But I tempted to kind of jump back on at some point just to see like that journey through, because it did feel, it felt like a kind of a completely different game to retail, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 points there for me. So first of all, you touching on the progression of classic WoW or classics kind of trajectory into modern retail stuff and classic plus and all that. That's actually the topic of my next video. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I'm specifically touching on like what is classic plus. I think one of the it's something this conversation has been going on since 2019, since the original classic came out. It's like, well, what's going to happen after classic? Well, Blizzard is like, we don't know, so we're just going to release the expansions again. And then now eventually, they're currently in Mists of Pandaria, and as I'm sure you know, after Mists of Pandaria, we have Warlords of Draenor, which is considered the worst expansion in the game's history. And I think labeling that classic Warlords of Draenor is just kind of like, if there's anything to make fun of Blizzard for, it's something like that. It's such an absurd concept. It's the worst expansion. It's the biggest decrease in player base, and the game arguably has really not recovered since. It's just a very, very bad expansion categorically, and there's a potential of that happening. So crazy. And Classic Plus is kind of
wild, right? It's completely wild. Like it's like if old school RuneScape dropped the evolution of combat again.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
looking at the thing that just like killed, or like taking away free trade in the wilderness. It's like looking at the thing that clearly killed a lot of your player base, and
just doing
if
it
they
again.
decide to do that, it's just that mind blowing.
It's insane, right? And I completely agree with you. And I think that Mists of Pandaria is already a far cry away from what classic ever was. It's more similar, in my opinion, to retail, even though it still has its merits. I still enjoy Mists of Pandaria in some ways. It's very much still just like a retail-esque game now, more seasonal, all that kind of stuff. But for Classic Plus, it's like, something I've always kind of been critical of, both of Blizzard and the player base, is what is Classic Plus to people? What does it mean? What does it look like? And it's actually a conversation I had with Josh over Discord DMs, like over the course of multiple days, because yeah, And I actually had some other people reach out to me in regard to that, because it's like, what does Classic Plus even look like in WoW? What is
Yeah.
like, how does WoW's system map onto adding more content? It's a theme park MMO, and oftentimes I see people going, well, more dungeons and raids, right? That's the thing. But to me, dungeons and raids are not what is the appeal of Classic WoW, right? I always try to, in my videos talking about Classic, I always try to kind of understand why people enjoy it. And based on every single piece of data we have, new dungeons and raids are not the thing that brings people back or keeps people playing. It's
Yeah.
everything else, right? So when you say I want to rekindle that journey in Classic, the leveling of Classic, just the experience from 1 to 60 to me is the best the best part of the game, and it's the one that is the most like, unique to the game. It's the best. It's my favorite
Yeah.
leveling experience of any theme park, easily MMO. And well, what does it mean to have Classic Plus? More dungeons and raids, that's more instanced content. Doesn't really fit the idea of a World of Warcraft. More zones. Well, but that's another weird thing, right? If like, are they going to release 2 new continents out of the blue? That's not going to happen,
Yeah.
because part of the joy of Classic WoW is that you have this kind of agency with which zone you go to, where you have quests that are doable. You get to this point where you're like, I can only do 6 quests in this one zone, and then I'm trekking all the way across the world to this other zone just for 6 other quests that are doable, because everything else is out of my level range and too difficult for me to
Yeah.
solo. It's really captivating. It's tedious, but it makes you appreciate just how big and expansive and seemingly never ending the game is, and how each zone differs from the other, what mobs are there, what loot they have, what dungeons are there. It's so captivating. And I don't know if that maps onto Classic Plus ever, or incremental releases ever, because at the end of the day, new dungeons and raids are going to power creep the content. It's not going to keep
Yeah.
Molten Core relevant. That's impossible. WoW's always been about power creep, even if in Classic it was less. So they're going to power creep that content, which you're going to add 1 new zone, 2 new zones, maybe rework some old zones or expand old dungeons too. What does that mean? Like, okay, well, I guess the leveling is going to be more interesting, maybe, or at least I get a couple more dungeons at endgame to do, but that's it. You're still just
Yeah.
filtering through that content once and forgetting about it. So what is Classic Plus? And my next video is going to be talking about that. Like,
Yeah.
the fact that I think that while old school RuneScape is fascinating and it's something to pull inspiration from, you cannot, I don't think, map onto Classic the RuneScape thing. You can't map
No, I
Classic Plus
completely
into
agree.
old school RuneScape, right? They're 2 different subgenres. And the final thing I'll say about that is, uh, you can technically, but that would completely destroy, in many people's eyes, the actual classic of Classic WoW, right? The Warcraft of Classic, right? If you
Mm.
if you make it into a curated sandbox, you could, but is that even World of Warcraft anymore? That's a question
Yeah,
to ask.
yeah, I think that's it. They're very different games in the way they've been built. Yes, they're defined by kind of the same genre of game, MMORPG, but like I don't know how you create new content in WoW where it not be power creep. Like I don't understand how I don't know. I think they clearly don't know either. How you create new content in there? How do you create new weapons that don't immediately make old weapons completely null and void? Which is the thing that RuneScape can do and does really well. And I don't know if that's because the leveling journey in RuneScape is not the same. Even like you said, the leveling journey in Classic is the experience, and it's not a rushed thing like it is in retail, but it's still different to RuneScape as far as I can tell, in a sense of like you don't quite hold at certain levels for quite as long. It's not as long a journey. Like if you're getting to like combat 126, I'm sure you can probably speed run it somehow. But people spend ages not. I mean, I've played this game, yeah, as I said, on and off for 20 years. My main account never got anywhere near level 126. Like it's just not the thing that people play RuneScape for. So introducing items at lower levels is plausible, and even introducing better items, something that you require 80 attack to wield, doesn't make something like the Abyssal Whip completely useless. Like it's been in the game for however long, and it's still one of the best items in the game. Like how they've done that is it's incredibly impressive, but you can't translate that to WoW as far as I can tell, just because they're very different games.
Yeah, I think that, and there's a whole separate topic to address here in regard to itemization in RuneScape, but I feel like with classic WoW especially, it's it's a longer game than retail, but it's compared to RuneScape. I mean, you're going 1 through 60 in classic WoW in less time you'd get one skill to max in RuneScape. So it's like
Yeah.
the scale is very different, and the way you eat through content is very different. And in old school RuneScape, because of the way that different professions integrate into the skill, how they populate each other, how they influence each other, it's a much more horizontally driven game. Well, they
Yeah.
have the ability to add like a herblore minigame, and suddenly now that's going to be a huge facet of progression for some people, while for others it wouldn't be. But in WoW, they don't really have that option. It's very combat focused. It's very combat driven, even in Classic.
Mm.
So unless we're arguing for opening up all professions to everyone, making them scale like RuneScape, adding hundreds of new profession specific items, and create that as a new facet of horizontal progression for your gameplay, would WoW players even want that? Do they want to play a game that's going to ask more time from them? That's a difficult thing to wrangle
Yeah.
as well, because I think Classic Plus only works if it becomes more long form, and the prevailing attitude I feel for a lot of WoW players is shorter, make things less
Mm.
time. Even though I think that's antithetical to the entire concept of an MMO and something I'm always critical of. It's like, okay, you're a guy, maybe you're a single father of 77 kids. You can't play a video game as much as you could before.
Yeah.
But you're choosing to play the most time-consuming genre on earth, right?
Yeah.
Is it the genre's job to adjust its intent, or is it your job to maybe play a different game if you still want to play games, right? It's not. You shouldn't ask the system to bend to you if the system has been functioning outside of you for at least
Yeah.
at this point a
Absolutely. Yeah.
generation. And I really feel like MMOs, when they have, and in my opinion they have, the modern swing of MMOs has been very much into seasonal short form stuff. Well, they've kind of became worse. Like MMOs, it's not a hot take to say that most people are dissatisfied with the current state of affairs for MMOs,
Mm.
and people say, why don't studios invest? Why are MMOs either just like kind of slop content immediately dead on arrival, or pay to win garbage, or what is happening with MMOs? And I think it all boils down to this need to cater to people that don't actually want or enjoy MMOs as they were. And
Yeah.
the real kind of signpost to that being the case is the fact that the most popular recent MMOs have been World of Warcraft Classic. The release in 2019 had millions of people come in. And now the only growing popular MMO is Oldschool RuneScape. So it's just like
Mm.
some of the two most popular MMOs on earth right now are old games that are all about retaining what made them palatable and old. The vibes, the long-term progression, the keeping your achievements your own kind of thing, the lack of seasonality, the lack of catch-up mechanics, all this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
it's time to kind of I think take a step back and realize that, yeah, we're not going to get the biggest market in the world, but the market that is there for these games is more than big enough to grow and sustain that growth for a long time. And clearly MMOs are not infringing on, League of Legends with their competitiveness. They're nowhere near that size. Even the most popular games like retail WoW, clearly they're not infringing on, some of the biggest single player RPGs, not even close. So what market are they even appealing to at this point, right? This
Yeah.
weird short form ARPG demographic that's in a stasis and shrinking, because games like Path of Exile 2 are going to do what World of Warcraft is doing right now, but better, right? Because they have a
Yeah.
whole system
Yeah.
around that. Something I said in a prior video is that retail WoW feels like an ARPG with no interesting gear, which is
Mm.
the whole thing about ARPGs is getting an interesting piece of gear that augments your playstyle.
Yeah.
The question to you
Yeah.
would be do you know about Legion, the Legion expansion for WoW?
I know of it. I
Yeah.
never played when that was released, though.
Yeah, something that I kind of I love Legion. Legion is probably the last great expansion for WoW, and one of the only, in my opinion, great
Was
expansions for
before
WoW.
Pandaria, or was
No,
that a couple
Legion
before it?
Legion was actually after Pandaria. That's the hot take.
Oh.
Where
Right,
Legion
okay.
was after Warlords of Draenor. So what happened with Warlords of Draenor
Okay.
is that they were hemorrhaging subscribers. The expansion kind of bombed, and they had two choices. They could either continue developing it out and see it through to the end, or, and this is what I think they did, is they just cut production on Warlords of Draenor, cut an entire patch schedule out of it, rushed the final patch out, and then relayed all of those developers that would have been working on the future patches or intermediary patches into Legion and made a more like holistically appealing expansion. And in turn, Legion completely reworked the way retail WoW functioned. Just like it changed everything.
Right.
And the parts of Legion that I really loved that people have maybe become more jaded to are they kind of reworked WoW into an ARPG, into like a game like Path of Exile. It was more seasonal, but things were more impactful. The power growth was more insane. They had legendary items in that you would earn as rare random drops, that would completely change your class.
Are they the class legendaries?
Yes,
as well,
exactly. But they were just random drops like you would get in a Diablo or Path of Exile game, and they would totally change your playstyle. Like you would get your best in slot and it would fundamentally change your rotation. It was super satisfying, even though there were issues with the way they were dropped and balanced. Those were really satisfying. They implemented these artifact weapons that had their own talent trees associated with your progression. It was kind of infinite, where everything you would do in the game would give you a currency that you would use to upgrade your specific weapon. And you could just play the game, and it would give value to you doing things like, their world quests or just random overworld stuff that you would otherwise like outscale eventually and see no value in. But it was so populated. People would be like creating these entire raid groups and flying through all the zones doing the world quest to farm up power for their, artifact weapons. It felt more populated. It felt more multiplayer. And I think people connected to that even when they didn't see themselves connecting to that, because Legion really retained a player base. And it fulfilled, at least began to, that idea of an ARPG MMO. That's very unique. That was a new niche for WoW. But in the following expansion, BFA, sorry for the lore drop here, but in BFA, they were like, okay, we're going to do that again because Legion was so popular and so successful. And they just did not have the development time or schedule to do it because they invested so much time and effort into Legion. So BFA launched, and it had the very same kind of like architecture of this infinite grind, this powering up an item, but none of the items were impactful. Like your artifact weapons with their own unique talent trees that would completely change the way your class or spec played were replaced by a necklace that was just passive secondary stats, not even an effect. So you expect players to put the same amount of time and effort, but for no tangible kind of evolution of their character. And then reasonably, people were burnt out or were saying, this sucks. And what players are good at is knowing when something sucks, but what players are bad at is knowing why. So people kind of really harped on like, well, it sucks because it's infinite. It sucks because of how much time it requires. But no, it sucks because the reward for that time doesn't feel worth it. So you stop doing it and you get burnt out. It doesn't suck because the MMO is asking time from you. And I'm super passionate about this because it's like, it's a genre that asks time from you. That's how it works. It needs people to be in the world, to be a world, right? Like it needs that. It needs to be persistent. And Blizzard it took them a while, but they were like, fine, this does suck. And they removed all of these ARPG systems like legendaries and random rare crazy drops and unique items and, the infinite power scale. And they replaced it with nothing. And so you're just playing an ARPG that just has a shitty, boring progression and itemization. And everybody who was disinterested in that became apathetic to it because it stopped catering to them. So people like me fell off of WoW, stopped playing, and people that keep playing are just kind of mainstays of the genre or mainstays of the game and the IP, and they're not growing. That market is not growing, which is why retail WoW has just kind of been this flat line of engagement since then. And it's disappointing. So I guess the roundabout reason I'm bringing all this up is because creating this impactful like itemization, this journey, this time investment that you need for MMOs is kind of the lifeblood of it. And Legion was the first and last expansion in my memory for World of Warcraft that ever increased its demand from its players while giving them a reasonable output for that demand, right? Like you would grind 150, 250, 300 hours in old school RuneScape for an item from one of the raids, a really good item, but it feels worth it because of how impactful that item is for you, right? Like a scythe or a T-bow or whatever. In WoW, that doesn't have that anymore, and they haven't replaced it with anything interesting. With Classic, they kind of do, right? Like it's not that long of a grind, but it is a grind, and getting a really unique drop from a raid, as easy as the raids are, is really impactful. You know the item, the stats on that item are super good for you, and it's gonna change fundamentally how your character feels to play. And you can go and rip through a battleground if you have, you know, you got one of the legendaries, you got Sulfuras, you know,
Yeah,
from Ragnaros, you're gonna rip through people at the battlegrounds because that's just, it's not scaled. You
and
just
it's
go into the
worth it.
battleground, yeah, and it's worth it. It feels like you've
Yeah,
the past, you know, 2 months of doing this raid, 3 months of doing this raid have paid off because now you're equipping something that is not only recognized by everyone around you as fully unique, but it feels unique. You know, you're ripping through
yeah,
everyone.
yeah.
That's
And
my
I think
rant.
this is like something that I just gonna tie back to like kind of the whole microtransaction thing, because like I think so I've kind of had this like yearning at the moment, like last few weeks, for like a kind of like an MMO RPG with like a, I guess more of a kind of action combat style,
Yeah,
to play on the side of RuneScape. Because just to very quickly slip in, one of the reasons that I think RuneScape is as appealing as it is the ways that you can play it as well. So I
definitely.
can play it AFK, I can play it fully focused, I can, you know, I can play it in a sense of where I click every 10 minutes or I click every 30 seconds, or I literally can't have anything else on because I'm so focused on what I'm doing. Like I think that's another thing that a lot of MMOs can't even can't even try to
Yeah,
do, but it does really well.
I got super
Um,
burnt out after leagues. I never played leagues before, so I played it like I maxed my account in leagues, and I did everything.
Jeez.
Yeah, so I played leagues so much, and I got super burnt out from RuneScape. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do passive AFK stuff while playing all the
Yeah.
different games on my catalog. I played through so many like different Souls games or Souls likes, all these different RPGs that I've had that I've been wanting to play all these different games, and every single time I've had my little laptop open on the side with like AFKing something, whether it be fishing or
Yeah.
thieving. I got 499s mining, thieving, fishing, and woodcutting, just doing that
Nuts.
over the course of 2 months. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Sorry, continue
It's
about
like,
MMOs. Yeah.
yeah, it's just I just to that point, and I played a couple of games, played a bit of Marvel Rivals last year when it came out, and like it was enjoyable for the time being. But yeah, always had just like me. Sorry if you can hear that outside.
Yeah. No, it's all right.
Someone
It's all
running
right.
down the street. um, and yeah, like I was just constantly fishing, like just constantly fishing, doing a bit of woodcutting, doing a bit of mining, and I think that's kind of like one of the reasons that it's so great is because you can always have it there. It's like kind of like it's like a constant. It's like every other game is kind of temporary, but that's a constant. But yeah, back to the kind of ARPG thing, and I looked at Throne and Liberty because I actually played it
Yeah.
when it came out, like about a year ago now, and I really enjoyed it. Like I actually really enjoyed the process of leveling up. The combat felt pretty good. Don't get me wrong, there were problems. Like I kind of I still had that satisfaction of the gear that I was getting maybe look cool and felt more powerful and stuff like that. And the progression was definitely there. I didn't play it a huge amount. I got to like level 45 or something like that. But then I looked at the Steam reviews in the last few weeks, and all of them were just like, this is just a massive grind fest at the end of it. You don't get anything for it. Like literally, to your point, it's like the hours that you have to put in, and then the pay to win element as well, in the sense of like you can just pay for a lot of this stuff, and it's quite heavily paid to win. I was just like, what's the point? Like, what is
Yeah.
the point? There needs to be a good balance between the effort or time that I'm going to put in, which I'm willing to put in. Like I have that time, I have that, that kind of desire to put my own time into the game, but only if it's going to kind of give me something back that isn't kind of either just bought really easily, or just not worth it at all. Like it's just like kind of there is no end game, or that there's no moment of satisfaction where it's like this was totally worth the time. Like, and there needs to be a really good balance between that. Like if I am coming back to the Valhalla, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, like I was putting my time in and I just was not getting anything out of it. Like
Yeah.
I think that's gaming in general, right? And that's
I
why so many people I think feel just like kind of disconnected with gaming, as like as kind of as we've got older, I guess. Is that time to gratification back? I guess
yeah.
like because I get the other type of game that I play frequently is kind of maybe more competitive multiplayer games.
Mhm.
Kind of thinking things like League of Legends. I'll play that every now and then. I'm rubbish at it, but like I'll play it every now and then. And even getting into like Magic the Gathering recently and playing through the ranked system in Magic the Gathering was like really fun. And like, but that's interesting because that's entirely immediate in a sense. It's like, don't get me wrong, League of Legends, the time I put into it is way not worth the time I put into it, but it's still immediate in the sense of like I'm putting in 40 minutes for a game, I know exactly what I'm going to get out of it, and it's either my LP going up or down, and like,
Yep.
but I'm kind of like, my mindset is fine with that. Like, I'm playing a game, I'll enjoy the gameplay potentially with League. It's kind of debatable, and but then I know what I'm getting out of it, and that's just like it's a completely different type of game
Yeah,
because it resets every time you log in. But that is fine for me.
I
But
think
if
I
you're
think
doing an MMO,
there's like a myth, and tell me if you agree with me here. There's like a myth that people say where it's like the older you get, the less time you have to play games. That's true, kind of, but it's not that you don't want to play games that require time. Is that you just want your time to mean something when you're playing the game?
yeah,
And
100%.
yeah, exactly. So I continue.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. Like, I either want them to be a really clear relationship between what my time is worth. So in like the case of League, I'm absolutely aware of what my time is going to be rewarded with, if that makes sense. So I know going into it, like, I'm technically going to waste 45 minutes here, but that's fine. Like, I have 45 minutes to spare. I know what I'm going into. I know, I understand this kind of relationship, as it were. But it's trying those new games or even those old games that kind of don't feel like they respect your time as much because of elements of just falling flat in terms of the delivery and what you get back on it, or the element of pay to win if there is one, and feeling like you can't compete at the amount of time you put in, can't compete with someone else that's just spent a bit more money, is why people stop playing. It's why people don't even try. Like, hence me, like, looking around, like, looking again at Throne of Liberty, I even looked at like Black Desert Online to see
Yeah.
that game because I remember it coming out years ago, and at the time I didn't have a computer that could run it, but now I do, and it's like, oh, maybe I'll give that a go. And I kind of looked at it, and it's like some people saying good things, but some people were just kind of like, yeah, it's a bit of a grind fest, and again, kind of fallen a little bit to the side of pay to win, which is kind of predictable at this point because realistically, game developers need a small player base of people that spend money to kind of retain revenues, and that's kind of what they go after, and it makes sense for them, but it kind of does just mean that game is probably not going to be for me because I I think it's that stage of getting into it, like in a sense of like, I'm not going to start this journey knowing that. If I
Yeah.
started it knowing a different outcome and then it got introduced, then I'd be gutted, but I'm in it at that point. Maybe I wouldn't spend money, maybe I quit, but to actually start that game in that sense is yeah, probably not going to happen. I'm
Yeah,
just going to turn away and play
it's
something
funny
else.
you bring up Black Desert because I think I only mentioned this in like one of my videos, but it's like an older one where the way I got into old school RuneScape is through Black Desert. Actually,
Oh, really?
after quitting WoW, I was kind of searching for another MMO to kind of sink my teeth into. And I'm like, I've know about Black Desert. I've kind of dabbled here and there, only just like for a couple, like maybe an hour or two at a time. And it's
Mm.
cheap. It's borderline free to play. So I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. And I know it has the pay to win stuff and all that, but I'm like, it can't hurt. And it's a very unique game because it is more of a sandbox than other MMOs, very
Mm.
much so. And that's kind of what it kind of kickstarted my interest in more sandboxy games because it does so much that I love, so much that I love actually. There's so much about it that is just fundamentally broken, as you point out. It's pay to win. It's always been pay to win. It's very
Mm.
pay to win in some ways. But like, but outside, and it's like inordinately grindy, like genuinely super
Yeah,
super grindy. And the kind of grind that you're generally doing in Black Desert is you're going in circles, farming the same mobs over and over again.
yeah, that was
Um,
another thing I saw in
yeah,
the comments as well.
yeah, and to its credit, going in circles and farming the same mobs has never been so much fun because the
That's the other
combat
thing I
is
heard. The
yeah,
combat is apparently like S tier, like
it's
it's the
it's
best
really
combat in
really
MMO.
fun. It's like it's I always say like retail has the best combat because it actually uses its combat for something interesting, which is the raids and dungeons. In
Right, right.
BDO, there are like some dungeons, but they're not great. And most of the time, you're just kind of doing the combat either for PvP, which is like a fighting game level of don't touch it because it's so like beyond you. That's how the impression I got anyway.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's just for mob farming. And I have 1,000 hours in BDO, so I played a lot of it. I got super
Right.
addicted for like half a year. And I really enjoyed most of my time with it and leveling up my characters and finding which class really resonates with me. The
Mm.
class design is really wonderful in BDO. Like there's so much like unique and just it plays more like a fighting game where you're doing combos on your keyboard, less so than you're
Yeah.
just pressing abilities. Like and you're like, you got to shift F when you're sprinting to activate like the, disengage or whatever. And
Yeah.
I played a bunch of BDO, and farming was interesting, and the even like just the actual process of farming is very simple. But min maxing your rotation was kind of interesting in the same way that OSRS grinding can be kind of interesting sometimes. And
Yeah.
simultaneously to that, what you obtain from that is very impactful. I remember I was grinding, and I'm forgetting all the names now. It's been like a year and a half, but I remember I was grinding this really rare. There are these things called they're like infinite mana and infinite health potions. So in the game, you would like you mow through your health pots when you're grinding because sometimes you take damage,
Right.
and your mana pots too. And you can auto use them too, but you'd run out eventually. But you could get an infinite version of it, right? Like just one that's
Right.
just infinite. So it's a very nice quality of life update. And to get it, you need to farm like two different groups of mobs, and each one drops like a half of it, and then you put them together to create the thing. And it's
Right.
like,
Okay.
man, like every individual mob has like a 0.0001% chance of dropping the half.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is beyond rare. So I maybe spent like 50 to 60 hours grinding them or something to obtain it. But when I got it, I'm like, God damn, this is awesome. Like this is a really
Yeah.
impactful quality of
Is the
life
payoff
item.
was worth it, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, the
Yeah.
payoff is not worth it for a lot of like those items are really cool, but for most items in the game, they are less so worth it because there's not as much of a visual progression in the game. It's very like cosmetics
Right.
driven
Okay.
and all that kind of stuff. It's the armor is not there's not as many armor sets to equip or whatever, so it really lacks in that way. But the system itself captivated me for enough time where I was like, I could really appreciate that. And simultaneously to that, it's more sandboxy because it has all this genuinely like unbelievably complicated like trade systems and trade routes. You could create these workers and manage them in different
Right.
nodes around. It is like it is a whole different game. Like there's people that play it just for trade and stuff, and I'm like genuinely very impressive and cool and has that like
Yeah.
open-ended element. But it's what ended up getting me to filter into old school RuneScape. When it comes to BDO, and I say this, don't spend money on it, but you can check it out. I spent $20 on BDO. I got a tent. That's like the most pay to win item ever because you spend $20 or whatever on it, and it just allows you to put up a tent anywhere, and it can repair your gear, repair your items, sell you stuff,
Okay.
and it's
Yeah.
just very convenient. But beyond that, you can just kind of get your time's worth out of it. Certainly for $20,
I mean,
and
that's the
yeah,
thing, right? Like, that's kind of makes me like when you're just talking about it, it makes me think like it's like what do we want out of MMOs? Like, because you clearly there like 20 bucks. Like you say, the game is basically free these days. I think I literally bought it the other day just because I thought if I want to play it, I saw it was on sale on Steam, like 79p.
yeah, exactly,
And like it's that's well worth your time and money, right? Like 20
yeah.
bucks for 6 months of playtime, 1,000 hours. Like in any entertainment industry, that's ridiculously good. Like it's really good, like return on investment in terms of your money. Yeah, I guess it's an interesting one in
I,
the
I
sense
guess
of like,
I guess for MMOs it's a little bit different, right? Like for any game, I'd agree, right? Like any most game, I mean, a movie ticket is less expensive at this point,
yeah,
but
exactly,
for MMOs it's different. I think that like the reason there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the genre is because what people want is not a set amount of time for their money; it's forever, right? Like what they want is a second, like a second life essentially, not like literally from a role
yeah.
plays perspective, but just from like a game that I will always be able to log into and pick up from whenever I want, and it's always going to be there. It's a facet, it's a hobby. There's gaming as a hobby, but then there's also World of Warcraft as a hobby or RuneScape as a
Yeah, yeah.
hobby, because it exists past the genre in some ways. And I
I
think that's
do, I
why, yeah.
do, I do agree to a certain extent. But I also think that I'd be happy. Like for example, so I always say that Star Wars: The Old Republic is one of my favorite MMORPGs.
Yeah.
But it's not something I think I'm gonna always go back to. Like I often find myself kind of re-downloading it and playing through some of the stories again, or working up a new character from scratch. But I don't know if I would still put it in that kind of like this is something I'll always have because I don't know. Well, because I don't think it's going to be around forever because it's not got the biggest player base. I think that the end game's pretty poor. But I still would say it's a really good game, and I think I've got about 400 hours in that game, and I'd say like, yeah, time well spent. I'm happy with that. So it's like an element of like, well, I don't even know if it needs to be for life with me personally. It's like I am happy to boot up an MMORPG and have that journey. If to put a couple of hundred hours into it, like even the other one that I played quite a lot is ESO.
Yeah, I played
I
ESO
played
too.
that for a couple of hundred hours when it first came out, and I've struggled to get back into it since the first time I played through it. But still, again, really enjoyed it and spent whatever the subscription fee was at the time and the original base cost for the game. So yeah, it's an interesting one where, yeah, like you say, the demands I think are different depending on the genre, but also from person to person, because I don't know if I would put that much pressure on an MMO these days. Especially, I don't know if that's out of dissatisfaction or disappointment and kind of my just what everyone's representation of the scene at the moment. Like we've seen so many MMORPGs come out that have just failed, like you said, on release, or at least maybe survive a couple of months before kind of falling to the wayside. You know, you hear about MMORPGs having been in alpha development for 7 years, and you've got like Ashes of Creation that seems to be this MMO that's just never going to come out, but if it does, it's going to be the MMO that kills all MMOs. But it's also that, like, you just put so much pressure on it. It's like, all this stuff, there's so much noise around it, which is understandable because we're all kind of gagging for like what we have had in the past. So at this point, I'm kind of like, if an MMO comes out and I can, like spend a subscription fee of 10 quid a month and play it for 2 to 3 months, like, I'm like, yeah, I think that's fine for me. Like that, I'd say is I don't mind that. A couple of 100 hours in there, like you said, like that's more than most games that come out these days that are $70 or 70 quid even. So probably like even more actually in dollars now.
I will say, like, maybe I'll amend my statement there, because I feel like what you just described to me, I would classify as like a disenfranchisement with the genre, but also it's also like being a realist, right? Like my thing with like people want a whole different life or whatever. That's like the ideal position, right? Like everybody kind of wants that, but we also mitigate our expectations. We shouldn't go into every MMO expecting that, because looking back on my time with Guild Wars 2, on my time with ESO, on my time with Black Desert Online, even, I'm not like disappointed with them. I'm not like these are the worst games ever because they didn't, I don't still play them. But it's more just like the genre. I'm just not expecting it from the genre anymore as much.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like that is disenfranchisement to a certain extent, because I think that's what the genre is kind of known for doing. But simultaneously, it's also just being a realist. Today's market is competitive or whatever. And when it comes to like Ashes of Creation and everyone saying that this is going to evolve the genre, like when's the next big evolution of the MMO? I don't really see it that way from like from a realist perspective, really. I don't think that MMOs as a genre need to be evolved. That's why we're kind of going backwards in a lot of our appreciations for them. And I don't really know if any genre needs to be evolved. I think iterated, like changed, and like certain things are improved with time. But it's not like you look at a first-person shooter and are like, oh yeah, this has changed so much. No, it hasn't. Like, yeah, we have like the Doom was like an original. Wolfenstein was an original, and a Call of Duty doesn't resemble that, but other games do. I mean, the boomer shooter is kind of like the most popular indie kind of subgenre there is right now, and all of those games are just iterating on the format popularized by Doom. Call of Duty just kind of branched out from Medal of Honor, right? Like Call of Duty is just a different kind of first-person shooter. It's not compared to Doom. It's more compared to Medal of Honor. And even looking at original Medal of Honor games, that functionally it's just been iterative. It's not like something's drastically been evolved. They've implemented more RPG elements into them, definitely. But beyond the progression, the actual moment to moment, it's gotten faster, it's gotten slower, it's gotten up, you've been jetpacking, now you're on the ground again, now you're going to be jetpacking again. Whatever it is, it's like that's just changes to point and shoot. I don't necessarily believe that there's an evolution that should come from the MMO. It's more so a collective, understanding and iteration on the things that have been working, and removal of the things that haven't. And in my opinion,
it's execution.
And the future of an MMO, to me, the future of the genre, if it is going to get popular or more popular again, it's one that's not going to resemble like now it's Sword Art Online and you're going into the game, and if you die in the game, you die in real life. Like it's going to be these are the parts of the old games that have worked really well, but now they're just more slick, maybe packaged using some more modern tech or whatever. It's not going to be we've changed the way the whole genre operates. It's we've made the things that have already worked well work better. That's how World of Warcraft became so popular, right? Like
Yeah,
WoW was
exactly.
did not evolve the genre; it just iterated on the things that EverQuest did well and ignored the
Yeah.
things or simplified the things that it didn't. Like it made the onboarding easier, it made the questing easier, it made the game itself. It was called easy, at the time compared to now, it's kind of laughable, but yeah, like it simplified things, it streamlined things, it made the theme park MMO the quintessential thing that people think of when they think of MMOs, and it didn't do that by just changing the way an MMO is perceived. I think the biggest evolution of WoW is just creating an uninstanced open world.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like you said, it's purely on like execution. And if things go from like a state of being so drastically far away from what they originally were, and that's like the evolution, then I think it just kind of creates like a subgenre of game. Like, and that's common as well. Like subgenres appear out of iteration if they go far enough away from what they originally were, and that's kind of like completely fine as well. Like that's like a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what happened, right? We have sandboxes and we have theme parks now. That's the two
Yeah,
subgenres,
exactly.
yeah, and they can converge in some ways. I think old school RuneScape, in my opinion, exists between the two, right? Like a sandbox
Mm.
MMO like Mortal Online is not that similar to old school RuneScape, not any more than it is WoW. RuneScape, to me, exists in the in between there, taking from both the parts that work, right? You still get a quote unquote, linear power progression in old school, right? Like the original
Mm.
bronze to rune treadmill or whatever else. But it's also integrating more sandboxy elements due to the way the skills interconnect. Which
Yeah.
not to go on a different topic here, but it's why I'm such a heavy proponent of like sailing, for example, as just a new skill, because skills to me is what make old school RuneScape work. Without
Yeah.
them, it's kind of like not a game as much
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And it would just be more closer to WoW than anything, even if there's no ability bar or evolution of combat or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I know we've been going on for a while now, but I did want to ask you just a couple things. So we talk about different games, different MMOs, and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, RuneScape is what you're playing now, but also simultaneously, you're kind of locked to old school, right? Like, or locked.
Yeah.
You're gated. You're time gated by YouTube because that's the whole nature of the beast. So you can't necessarily make a main account where you can do whatever you want on, like you
Yeah.
could as a chunk. It's kind of you're really locked. But I know you also watch some other content creators. What other content creators do you watch? What have you been enjoying recently? It can be old school, but
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. I mean, I'll try and think of some that aren't old school, but I mean within old school, yeah, it's one thing that I kind of mentioned very early on. You'll see it in the description of any of my videos if you kind of open it up and scroll down, that I haven't restricted myself from watching YouTube, old school YouTube,
Mm.
because I could have, I absolutely could have, and it would have probably made more sense for the series, but I just couldn't restrict myself from that because for me, it's the best content creation scene of
Yeah,
any video game. I think I think that
definitely.
the creativity that's come out of it and the quality that's come out of it is absolutely bonkers, like an absolute inspiration to me, and I know to so many other content creators that have kind of come up recently as well. Um, so yeah, I didn't do that. I do still watch it. I do kind of pick and choose what I kind of sometimes step back from. So yeah, I mean, I'm a massive fan of Josh's gaming.
Yep.
Big fan of his series. I think he's just kind of just taken production quality to like the next level. Storytelling is ridiculously insane, just like really engaging videos. He'll have a 45-minute 50-minute video of him killing black dragons and it just flies by. Like he just has a knack for it that I don't think many other people do. Obviously, I watched like the classics as well, like Settled and Jimmy, as much as I can. I can't unfortunately watch. It's the one series that I have restricted myself from is watching is by release because it's a
Yeah,
quest
of
focused
course.
series.
Yeah.
So unfortunately I can't watch that. But like Telecon as well with his chunk locked Volcano series is one that I kind of had to semi restrict myself. So I watched it up until the point where he got to Jad, and then I had to stop watching it because I knew I was going to take Jad on, and so I didn't want to spoil what my kind of memory of Jad was. And then as soon as I did Jad, I then went back and watched it, sort of thing. So I kind of play it like that in a sense of like I can kind of tiptoe around certain things. Um, but yeah, I mean there are some incredible
For
creators
sure.
out there. I think one of my favorite ones as well is Colonello. Kind of
Mm.
the documentary style
Yeah.
approach to it, just really well done. Like I just really enjoy all the stories that he pulls out, and tells, and often they're like kind of from back in the day, and they're just a little bit more wild than some of the stuff that we might get today. But yeah, just like about how a couple of players on Classic just started basically a complete monopoly on a specific item or something like that. Like things that you couldn't happen today in RuneScape, but obviously could in its early days.
For sure. Yeah,
And
great shout outs there for sure.
yeah, I think that yeah, and I think that outside of I'm trying to think of like outside of RuneScape what I spend my time watching. But for now, like it's kind of dependent on what I'm playing or what I'm doing. So like in the last sort of 6 months, I've taken up golf as a sport, as a hobby. I'm absolutely awful at it, but it's one of these weird sports where it kind of catches you and you become like slightly addicted to that. Like you hit one golf shot that's quite nice, and that's
Yeah.
it. You're like you're now going to just dedicate a ridiculous amount of time to it, and trying to chase that feeling. So a lot of my YouTube feed is golf content creators as well. But yeah, also just other games as well. I've for some reason in the last sort of 2 weeks I've really got back into Bloons, like Bloons Tower
Oh, of
Defense.
course. Yeah, everyone goes through a balloons phase. It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like played it years ago, and then I've started playing it again a little bit, but like primarily like Bloons YouTube, like so like people doing challenge runs and people seeing how far each monkey can get or each tower can get, or like just if you just use one single tower, like all that sort of stuff. It's a place I didn't expect to be on my YouTube but journey, but that's one of the things that I'm getting recommended at the moment. But yeah, I like it's wild. I think at the moment because I spend an awful lot of time playing RuneScape. Obviously, I also get through an awful lot of YouTube because it's just on my second monitor the entire time. So
For sure.
it's those sorts of things and podcasts and stuff
Well,
like that that I find quite enjoyable to kind of supplement whilst playing RuneScape.
definitely. And I'll echo a lot of those, right? Like I actually Josh from Josh Isn't Gaming might be coming on actually soon too for a similar kind of
Oh, cool.
conversation. Yep. Him and I have been, yapping endlessly about the future of World of Warcraft, and he has a lot of like
Yeah,
game design opinions.
well
So
fan as well.
yeah, exactly. So we've had some interesting conversations there. So I'm sure I'll make that work. I got Idle, got to shout him out too.
Oh
Also
yeah,
coming on
yeah, I
very
like all those
shortly.
videos. I
Yeah,
actually was watching one of his videos today, actually, the microtransaction video he just released,
yeah,
and there's something that gets me about him, like it's just never not going to be funny where it just cuts to him standing there with the green screen, but obviously the green screen you can see it's the green screen, and he's just got his green screen pants on.
yeah.
Like it's just like one of those things that like no matter how many times he does it, it's always going to get a little giggle out of me because it's just like it's just great.
Yeah, fun fact about that video, I guest starred in it right before
I
Josh started
saw.
his.
I
Yep,
did.
yep, very
Yeah, I
cool,
did, and I
very cool.
noticed I recognized your voice. I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit, that's cool. Yeah.
I did a lot of takes on that, and he used the most
Oh
normal
really?
one. Yeah. I had like 8 or 9 takes. There were some wild takes in there. Honestly, I did one as an old man. I did one in
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all Russian. I'm surprised they didn't use that one. But yeah, so but it was crazy. But I appreciate him. Yeah, he's gonna be coming on when we talk about games too. So it definitely love all the content creators you shouted out to. I think that there's a interesting delineation in RuneScape content creation. Obviously, I'm like just peeking into it now, but you have the old guard of old school RuneScape, right? From
Mm,
Bodhi to Settle to Framed. And then you kind of have, and maybe Soup too. And then you have kind of like this second gen, like you, Josh, Telecon, all these like newer content creators that came about from those and like
mm.
nicheified a lot of their, more broad content and created your own little pockets out of it, right? In a
Yeah.
very unique way. So I think that that's been really interesting to observe as someone who's like coming in even after that and just kind of looking into it, from the grapevine. I wouldn't say like people like Idle and Jimmy, they're more general content creators for MMOs. I would say,
Yeah.
but you guys are much more specific, like RuneScape related things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very interesting to observe that, and I agree with you. The RuneScape content creation scene is insane. I think that it's very inspirational. It's a lot to talk about, a lot to consider. Also, coming from the WoW scene, where, as I said, there's only like 3 branches of content, it's very rare you get something truly exceptional within the WoW content creation scene. I will say, Classic WoW had some bangers because it's a bit more open in that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if I always shot this video out or this series out. Have you seen Barney's Scarab Lord series?
I have not, I don't think.
Oh, dude, I'll send it to you after this. If you
Yeah,
got
yeah,
some
please do.
time, it is, it is, man, it's hard to say. Up there with like top 3 best video game things ever made, in my opinion. Like I would say, like when it comes to like,
Oh, I think
yeah,
I think I've seen this recommended. I haven't actually watched it yet.
oh my god, it's like unbelievable. And you know, much like the best RuneScape series, you don't necessarily need to have a huge knowledge of the game to like appreciate it. And you have
Yeah,
enough knowledge of WoW definitely to just get all of it.
yeah.
And it's just the storytelling is insane. The editing is insane. Just like the entire journey, going without spoilers, is insane. And I just like it is the perfect like encapsulation of everything that makes classic WoW so good. All
It's
the
only 4 videos, right?
yeah,
Is
it's
that the
only
one?
4 videos, but they're like
Yeah,
48
yeah.
minutes to an hour each. And if you watch that, let me know what you think, because man, it is
Yeah, I
like
will.
it somehow Barney, they've captured like this, they just managed to like catalog one of the most insane events in WoW, in World of Warcraft. And it's a re-release of the Gates of Ahn'Qiraj, which is this huge like multi-week long event that was the precursor to the raid Ahn'Qiraj releasing. And it was something called the War Effort, where like both factions had to donate things to like supplies essentially, and then a caravan
Right.
would move from over the course of multiple weeks, and then the caravan
Oh,
would
okay, I
move
get you.
over to the zone, and then the war effort would begin, and they would fight. They would need to collect like stuff in the zone, and eventually the gates of the raid would open up, and the person who would open them by ringing the gong would get like a unique mount that to this day is the
Right.
rarest mount in the entire game. And it's about their journey
Wow.
to try get that mount through
Right.
guild manipulation, through like interpersonal, like just deceiving. It is insane. I cannot sing its praises. Like it is up there with like Gillinor games to me, up there with Swampletics to me. It's unbelievable. So definitely check that one
Yeah,
out. And I will
I
say
will.
that that's like the real standout for WoW Classic content creation. But yeah, other than that, it's always been RuneScape for me, man. Gillinor games is so good. Have you been watching?
Yeah, Gilmore Games is ridiculous.
Because it's kind of similar to what you're doing. Have you been watching Mad Season at all?
I can't, unfortunately, just because of how similar it is. I mean,
Oh,
there's
true.
like a couple of the unguided guys. So like Mad Season, there's Caradus. I don't know if you checked him out. He's a
Yeah,
former
yeah.
wild guy that's kind of moved over. Obviously, Guzu's recently come over. Like all of those, unfortunately, like, I just can't watch it because a lot of
Well,
their content
eventually.
is yeah, exactly. Hopefully, eventually. But like, it's an interesting one because Jimmy obviously was probably one of the first, if not the first, to make a quest series. Like obviously there were quest guides beforehand, which was the kind of quest content we had back in the day, which was obviously before the wiki was as big as it is. We had like Rune HQ, tip sites and stuff like that, but a lot of people used YouTube guides. And so there was the quest guides that was quest content. Then Jimmy with by release. But outside of him, there wasn't really many other people. So when I started, again, that was a bit of a rare one. But then since then, yeah, like Mad Season and Caradus and stuff, a lot of their content is the quests. Like if you look at the quests and non-quest content in RuneScape, it's either almost the entire thing or it's none of it. So if you look at someone like Frame, for example, building a new account for PKing on it, he won't even tell you the quest that he's probably, or it would just like
Yeah,
flash up quest complete thing. It would just be like, I did this, did this, did this, did this, and it would be like less than 10 seconds and he's done what I would put into maybe 7 videos because of
right.
the nature of it. So that's why, again, when I started, I was like, oh, I don't need to restrict myself too much because no one really makes quest content. So there's not really going to be that many spoilers for me, and there really hasn't been so far. But I can't watch things like Mad Season or Caradus,
Yeah,
unfortunately, which
it's a
I would love to.
bummer because yeah, I mean, my God, there's some bangers. But yeah, like it's interesting. I bring up Mad Season because he was coming in as someone similar to Caritas, as someone who's just never touched RuneScape before. Like you have,
Yeah,
some of the basics just from your past with the game, your history with the game. So
yeah,
like,
exactly.
you're able to kind of intuit something or maybe remember something sometimes. Valencia Moss not included. The Mad Season, on the other hand, is just like never touched the game in his entire life.
Yeah,
So the way he's processing information and what he's discovering is just like it's like awe-inspiring in some ways. You're just sitting there like,
yeah.
what is happening right now? Like
I wish I could watch it.
he's
I
making
really
like
do.
studded leather bodies for gold. Like it's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
out
It's
there.
wild.
Um,
It is
I
crazy.
will say like Yeah, probably not, because yeah, he does do some stuff maybe that you haven't got to yet. But like his like Dragon Slayer video, right? Like just like I said, your Dragon Slayer video got me into your thing. His Dragon Slayer video got me into his thing. So if there's
Yeah,
anything you probably can watch is his Dragon Slayer video. But yeah, his stuff is fascinating. Just the way like him discovering what ticks are, like how do you
yeah,
even wrap your brain around that, and the way he
yeah.
contextualizes it by his understanding with World of Warcraft, it's just very, very cool content. But yeah, maybe eventually I also want to eventually make my own, not quest series, but I want to make a specific video about storytelling in old school RuneScape quests, because it's very interesting to me the way they do it.
Yeah,
I specifically want to make a video about Desert Treasure 2. You haven't done it, so no
I
spoilers.
haven't done it.
But
Yeah,
that's like the video I'm most excited for you to, or not video, but quest I'm most excited for you to get to, although that's definitely a whiles away. It's the
yeah,
best quest in the game, like bar none. It's the best one, and it is insane. Like it is super. It took me, and I was like I mostly did it without a guide because it's a modern quest. It's a bit more intuitive, but
yeah.
I was like kind of peeking here and there at some of the puzzles or whatever, and it took me 12 hours to do it. I
Fuck.
started at like 8 a.m. and I finished at like 10 p.m. It was crazy. Or maybe
I can't wait. I can't
it
wait
was
for some of the
awesome.
Grandmaster quests. I really
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
because
really,
like I've
really
just
great.
heard like really good things about it.
The modern
But yeah,
stuff is
that
just
sounds
so
great.
good, for sure.
I think storytelling in questing is really good. Like I think it's definitely worth a spot. Like some of it's fucking awful, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like there is some really bad ones that just don't make sense to me. But some of the
you,
storytelling in quests are really good. I just did the Wanted quest and I really enjoyed it. Like it
yeah,
was just
it's
a really fun
very
quest. Like you're
bizarre
just chasing
quest.
someone around, very
Yeah,
bizarre, but like it is just so funny. And like
I
some of them just contextually make zero sense. I did Sea Slug just after that.
that
And
yeah that yeah.
it's like it's wild. Like it's wild what is happening inside the quest, but also like I was doing it as part of the Temple Knights quest line, and until you do the one after it, there is zero context as to why you are on this fishing platform doing this specific thing. Like it's part of the Temple Knights quest line, but you're just like I think that's another thing where it's like kind of much more. It feels more sandboxy than other things because it's like it's the third quest in that series, but you just turn up to some random place on a beach, and then you go off, and there are slugs that are taking over people's minds, and it's like the whole time I was there, like, why am I doing this? And then it only becomes apparent when you do the one after it, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, cool, this
It,
makes a bit more sense, but it's
it
still a bit like, what the heck?
in some ways it's kind of cool where like you go and you do something that you think is irrelevant, but then it's, or at least like contextually
Yeah,
story-wise irrelevant, but then it's like it's wrapped into something else. It's other people that you're familiar with get wrapped into it. Like I think there's a lot of positives and negatives to the storytelling in old school RuneScape. I think that the modern stuff is really cool, like in what they do with it. I think the part that really resonates with me, though, in regard to the way old school RuneScape tells its stories, outside of like the writing, which is funny and occasionally really captivating, like again, Desert Treasure 2, the writing there is insane.
mm,
It got me so interested in the lore of the game. And
yeah,
I'm usually not that kind of person, but the parts that's really interesting me about quests, and you experience this even more than I ever did, is like there's the textual story, right? Like the stuff you do and the characters you talk to and the things they tell you,
yeah,
that's the story. But there's also like your own story that you tell, like as the choices you make as a character, not just like
yeah,
in
yeah,
the dialogue box, but like as a gameplay, as points of gameplay. And other MMOs don't really have that, because other MMOs questing, as you are obviously aware is just kind of go here, do, collect this, leave,
yeah, yeah,
whatever. And with old school, the questing is more multifaceted than that. And even
yeah,
more importantly, in my opinion, it's more difficult. Like not even just
yeah,
doing it unguided, just in general. The boss fights are harder. Like there's some quests out there, like later on, that the bosses will just KO you. Like you will die
yeah,
like multiple times, especially if you're going in without a guide. And no other MMO does that. And even
nah,
if you are just eyes planted on the quest helper, clicking the blue boxes or whatever, you're gonna go into the boss and you're gonna die, and you're gonna be like,
yeah,
that alone connects you with the quest. That alone
yeah,
creates a memorable experience, right? It's asking something from you, and I think that people only connect with games that connect with that ask them to. You need to be demanded to do something to do it yourself in some ways, and
yeah,
and the reason why a lot of people disconnect from the storytelling or disconnect from games, MMOs in general, is because MMOs are so afraid sometimes, modern ones especially, to ask you to do anything even marginally difficult. All
yeah,
retail content is a joke apart from the top end raids and dungeons. Everything else you can do
yeah,
with your, brain off. And that's what I hate about it. It doesn't teach people how to play the game. with old school RuneScape, man, if you don't know how to prayer flick, you're not going to do some of these endgame fights, or I
Yeah.
should say endgame quest fights, which is crazy to think, but that's what's so cool about it. And that's a secondary story that's being told. It's the story of like
Yeah.
learning the game itself. So yeah, I really want to make a video about that at some point. But yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
And your stuff is very like helpful in that regard. Like, watching your videos, I'm seeing both of those stories happen. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really interesting one where one of the parts of the reason why I started this is because I actually used to hate RuneScape quests, and I think a lot of people do. Like, I do think that, one of the reasons that the Quest Helper plugin is one of the most downloaded, I think it is the most downloaded plugin, is because of the fact that you are asked to do more than you would expect to do in a quest, if that makes sense. Like, it's not just go and kill 15 boars or whatever. Like, you are doing a actual quest with journey and characters and some puzzles in there and some thinking, and you need a guide. Like, it's so linked. The wiki is so, for most people, is open half the time you're playing the game, which is part of the reason I did it, because there is this really interesting link specifically in RuneScape in comparison to other games. And since doing the series, it's become my favorite piece of content. Like, quests has gone from my least favorite piece of content to probably my favorite piece of content, just because it's just shone this light on it in a way that I'd never experienced before. Like, understanding the dialogue and seeing dialogue I'd never seen before that makes me laugh. And actually having like proper like real reactions to things, like in Sins of the Father. Like,
Yeah. That quest line is awesome.
It's ridiculous. Like, finding out that Safalan is like, his dad is, what's his face? I can't even remember his name now. But like, that moment of like finding that out, and like that he's related to the vampires, is just like, I remember just being like properly like shocked and surprised, and like, even knowing there was something there because of the way that his NPC looked, I was a bit like suspicious of his character the entire time. It was
I remember you
like
talking about how tall he was. Yeah, I remember you always saying that to me.
He's massive, and he's got like blue eyes, and I was
Yeah.
like, something's clearly going on here. But even still, it was like a memorable moment of when you watch like one of your favorite TV shows, and there's like a plot twist, and you're like, oh shit! Like, they have them in there if they're given the chance to be told those stories. So yeah, I absolutely love it now. Like, I totally understand why people still don't love it, because we are, I guess, for the most part, quests are a means to an end. Like, we want the rewards, we want what they unlock, and we're not quite fussed about, especially if we are doing them with the Quest Helper plugin, which I totally understand why people do, is because we want to get it done as quickly as possible. But in that case, you've then just set aside like 2 hours if it's a long, difficult quest, or an hour and a half, which could just be annoying rather than entertaining. And in that case, then it does become quite annoying, like, frustrating content. But
I also think it's like, I think it's the past jading the current, right? Or the present, because there's a lot of quests back in the day that are super unintuitive. You point them out a lot, like that one quest. I think the Family Crest, I believe it was called, where where because the way the map expanded over time, the directions were incredibly unclear. Like, what is the Caridian Desert even? What is that? So like, those quests are very unintuitive, and they're bad in many ways, and should get changed, in my opinion, to become better. Because while people can say, oh, well, I like the nostalgia, and they use Quest Helper for them, the people that actually want to do it normally, these are bad, and you'd get switched off. If you weren't making a YouTube series about it, you might get completely turned off doing Quest Unguided. If there's some quests that are from 2003 that are totally incompetent in the way they guide you into certain things, or down certain rabbit holes or whatever, Valencia Moss, right? It's very interesting too, because I agree, right? I'm very min-maxy sometimes, so Quest Helper is something I used originally, and it's something I kind of drifted away from over time. I think I haven't used it on my Iron Man, my main account, for months now, because I have my quest cape, but also because every new quest that they're adding is intuitive, and it makes sense to just do without it.
There's a difference. There's a definitely noticeable difference with newer quests, for sure.
And my favorite like content updates, honestly, are a new thing releases, Varlamore Part 3, and with it a bunch of 3 or 4 new quests. And they're just sitting there with my group, I'm my partner, in Discord, and we're just doing the quest together. is so
Yeah,
fun. Like
figuring it
figuring
out.
out puzzles together, is super, super fun. There's a recent like master quest that came out, a lot of puzzles that we were having a lot of trouble with. And figuring those out was really, really fun, and having similar reactions to some of the bosses, some of the reveals, reading the dialogue to understand what's happening.
Yeah,
Those
and
became such awesome moments.
yeah, I think that that sums up exactly what was intended with quests. I think I'm actually not doing them the way that they're intended to be done for sure. Like, because that some people will say that I am, but I genuinely believe that they're meant to be done group
Yeah.
content wise.
Yeah.
Like, especially with like Legends quests and stuff like that. I think they were done in a sense of like, rather than it being on a website or something like that, it was more about like finding people. If you like, Legends quest just came out, or if you were like kind of doing it and there were other people around there kind of reaching it at the same point of view, you'd stand in for a rock and you'd be like, how can I do this part of it? And maybe you get someone to come along and help you, and you discuss like theories and stuff, and information would be traded around, and you kind of tackle these puzzles together, and you'd help a mate out, and you'd like do it together. And like, I love hearing that sort of stuff. I think a lot of people do the new quests on release unguided because the guides haven't been released yet, and the
Yeah.
quest helper hasn't been updated yet. And so you do hear stories like you just said about people sitting down, spending the evening figuring it out with a mate, and like that I think is the peak questing experience. I unfortunately can't do it, but I do think that that is the kind of peak questing experience today. Just is that kind of group content approach to how to trade information. I guess that is it's the same. Like the way that we trade information has changed. So at some point it was finding people in game or talking to a friend you knew in real life about it at school or whatever, and then it became, oh well, there's now a website that can host some of this information, so there's a guide on there, and then it became videos, and then the plugin is obviously the optimal way to trade that information. But it's changed it. It's kind of
Yeah,
morphed
it's not
it.
as communal anymore, right? Like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
for sure. And I, you can't unring that bell, nor do I really think they need to, right?
No, I
Acknowledging
don't
the
think they
fact
do.
that a lot of like, RuneScape quests are very obtuse. People are going to look up guides anyway, and having I mean, Quest Helper compared to like a YouTube guide or a wiki guide, it's just so infinitely better to use.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
even close, right? Like I think, not to go to a different topic here, but like I'm gonna play the RuneScape 3 leagues, and I know
Oh
RuneScape 3
yeah.
does not have a quest helper at all. They just had you use
Right,
their
right.
whatever wiki and stuff, and I'm like dreading it. I'm like, Jesus, this is gonna be miserable.
Yeah.
But by comparison to what quest helper offers, and then on the other hand, you still want people to engage, right? And I think that's part of what I said when I said like that secondary story that happens like in the meta,
Yeah.
because regardless of whether or not you use quest helper, you're still having a level of connection to the quests because of, first of all, how long they are, but second of all, because of how difficult they can sometimes be for players,
Yeah.
right? Doing some of the harder boss fights, even I know you in Sins of the Father, right? Was it Sins of the Father?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Ranistricon, I think it is.
He's the main big vampire. We haven't fought him yet. Um,
Oh
it's
no, yeah, it's not Ranis, it's just
Yeah,
oh, what's his
I'm
name?
forgetting his name.
Anstrom.
Yeah,
Ranstrom.
Van Strom. Yes, yes. Like that fight is hard and it kills people and it's cool, and like whether you have a quest helper or not doesn't really change the fact that you're going to need to do that fight, and
Yeah.
focus and maybe die to that fight, especially if you're not like over leveled or over geared or whatever. And that alone creates a level of connection to these quests, quest helper or not. So there's almost something, this level of like this interest of like, yeah, there is quest helper, and it does disconnect people from some of the puzzles and storytelling, but it at least retains a level of like friction between the difficulty offered, right? If quests helpers would just go and talk to a bunch of different NPCs, yeah, I feel like they would be kind of shit. But I'm glad that
Yeah.
nowadays we're getting a lot of quests that ask you to utilize more than just it's brain and brawn kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Um,
But I also think like this comes back to my point about the way you play RuneScape as well, and the reason I think it's so successful is like it's fine. Like the Quest Helper plugin like the people using it, I think is a really good thing. Like it's been created by the community. And if people want to play that way, then like absolutely let them, in my opinion. Like definitely there should be never like should be any talk of like kind of restricting it, in my opinion. Like I can go away and play my own journey and play without guides. Some person can play just only with information from their friends. Someone can go and just use YouTube videos if they want. But yeah, like you said, the Quest Helper plugin is the best way to quest if you're not that bothered about the quest. And if you're not bothered about the quest, like that's that's what makes RuneScape brilliant. Is like you can play RuneScape, you can say it's your favorite game ever, and have hated the quest as I used to do.
It's just you use one thing on another thing. That's the entire game, right? Like
Yeah.
when you understand that that's how the game works, because no other MMO really works like this. Like I kind of, this is again very philosophy game driven stuff, but like it's a kind of the language of the game, right? You're learning the language of the game design where you know that when you attach feathers to arrow shafts, you're going to create like the unfinished arrows or whatever, and that's that 1-0. But that 1-0 creates like a binary would interesting like sentences, right? Or full words from that 1-0. You have 2 letters. Now you have a word where you connect the arrow shafts to the feather, and then the unfinished arrows to the arrowheads. And now you have an arrow, and that's the word. And you can create a sentence out of that by equipping them and clicking on a cow and, safe spotting it or whatever with a bow. And like you have this really unique binary that creates its own language as you play the game, and you begin understanding that and creating your own unique things and testing things out. Something I noticed in your videos is like, okay, I'm in this new area, I'm going to right click everything, because something you notice about new players coming into RuneScape for like the WoW streamers and stuff is that they really didn't use the right click ever, because no other game gives you like a right click list of options that you can do on an object. That's so old school. And RuneScape does. So when you understand the power of the right click, the examine, whatever other options are there, sometimes they're contextual. Like you're like, oh, this is a whole different, game. Like this is there's so many different possibilities with every individual thing that you can test out and try and learn from. Like the second you realize that one jewelry spell or one spell can enchant one type of jewelry, you're like, oh, that means that every single type of necklace, ring, or whatever that I craft can probably be enchanted, regardless of whether you know or not. You're going to test that out. So that's so interesting. You can see it in
quests as well. Like you could, quest interactions is one thing, but you can see where there are certain things that you learn, and something for me has been like a struggle, and then from that point onwards, I'll kind of learn from that one experience and then take it into the next one. And like one thing that I've actually noticed, probably one of the biggest killers actually that happened in the Sea Slug quest, is you have to click on a tiny little bit of a wall at one point to kick it through. Like,
I know the part you're talking about.
But it's like impossible to know. So like I was walking around the platform for like 20 minutes because I was like, I have no idea what to do, because I couldn't hover. That's one thing that I don't know how they make that any more intuitive. I don't think they can. But like you say, I click on everything. So I was clicking on all the chests and all the shelves and stuff to see if I could search them, because they're things. But then when it's just like an inconspicuous bit of wall, I just didn't notice it. And so I couldn't click on it and just didn't realize until I just hovered over it. And then I was like, oh shit, there's something there. And the similar thing happened in the vampire quest line too. But as you say, it's kind of like that's an anomaly in a sense where it doesn't quite work, I don't think. But when it does work, it's intuitive. You learn things, and you kind of realize
in my eyes,
this is linked to this.
That's the kind of stuff that like can be changed, in my opinion. Because I remember the thing you're talking about in the vampire quest. It's like that stuff is just like can just be changed to be more visible. Like things can become more intuitive. But like
exactly
in another video I eventually want to make, or even just a topic I want to bring up in another video, where like there's something kind of genius about Cook's Assistant, right? Because it teaches you the overworld interaction and the interface interactions in a game, right? Like, you're milling the flour in a way you otherwise would never in an MMO or RPG or whatever. And you're learning like, okay, clicking one object into another object makes that function happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you're put in to make a pie, for example, or a cake or whatever, you are, combining these things. So next time a quest asks you to cook something, you're not going to be like, okay, what general store do I go to? Because that's how you think, cooking works, or that's how you think food works in the game. You're like, oh, I need to make this. Okay, well, it's a pie. So what do I need? I need dough. I need a pie tin, and then you're going to combine them all. So it's so interesting the way that's tutorialized that I hope that, I know modern quests do it really well, but I hope that there is a fine, gentle, careful brush taken over some older stuff, not to like remove elements of it, but just making certain things.
I think
like,
slightly,
like just some of the dialogue,
For me, the only quest that genuinely needs change is Family Crest. That's the
Yeah.
only one that's genuinely, I think, deserves of like an actual change because of the fact that it, to me, makes no logical sense. Because the thing that got me was the fact you need to talk to the gem trader before talking to the man, Avon Fitzharmon. If you
Yeah.
talk to the man before you talk to the gem trader, he is a different NPC. He's just called man, and you talk to him, and he says, "Go away, I'm busy."
Yeah, that's so
Then you
stupid.
talk to the gem trader, and then you go back to him, and then you can have dialogue with him. For me, that makes no sense because he has no idea you've spoken to the gem trader. So it's like a logical thing that I don't understand why it's in there. Like that's one thing. I think everything else can be made a little bit easier, but I don't hate it. I actually don't hate it because it's like it is a bit of a relic. It's like a bit of a callback. Like the fact that Legends Quest was so difficult, I kind of like it in a weird way. Like
Mhm.
this is an old game. Like it's a rebuild of an old game, and I kind of like an element of like unpolished nature. I don't think there's certain things that could be made slightly more intuitive. I agree, but I definitely don't want to go
Yeah,
back
no
and
quest reworks, just like
no,
very, very
exactly,
minor
yeah,
stuff. And I advocate for that. Like I made a whole video about like new player onboarding in old school RuneScape and how like the whole
yeah,
point of the game is setting a goal, working to achieve that, and then getting lost in the rabbit hole of A and B, right? Like I want to
yeah,
go do, Dragon Slayer, but I need to do 95 different things, whether it be training in
yes,
different ways or
exactly,
whatever.
yeah,
And that in between is where the gameplay is, right? Like that's the fun.
100%, yeah,
And like my opinion about old school RuneScape's like early game, teaching people the game, like conceptually it's fine right now as it is, but it just needs to ingratiate people into that better. Like the worst thing to me is getting someone to play old school and then the only thing they do is they just like fish shrimp for 2 hours and log off and never log in again.
yeah,
Because like doing something with no purpose, no goal being set doesn't really
doesn't feel
interest you.
great.
It's not you're okay, I'm fishing shrimp for what? To
Yeah,
just kill
exactly.
cows. So my whole thing about old school RuneScape is that I would want a better early game without changing anything about the early game. Essentially just
Yeah,
making sure people are aware of what they can do and then just kind of giving them like very broad options, right? Right now it's like you have the early player guide or whatever, which is like, get 5 fishing. It's like, who cares? And then you get a lamp out of that.
yeah,
Like, who
exactly.
cares? I rather tell people like achieve something more long term, like Dragon Slayer, like I don't know, doing one of the skilling mini games, which I won't tell you about because that's a spoiler. And and go do that. Okay, but how? And then you give them a list
Yeah,
of like stuff, like the requirements essentially for a quest, and then they can click on them and say, well, I can go do like a Slayer thing, I can go do this, I can go do that, and then after that, after they've done those like 3 or 4 things that are more like slightly more long-term goals, it just disappears because like, yeah, now you know that you can just look at something and go, I want that. Just tell people that
yeah,
that it's all about setting a goal and set the initial goals can be set for them, and then after that, you're free, right? Like go do your thing. But it's just
exactly.
my whole thing is that like I know people are very precious about this and they say no, it's all about like being really confused initially, and I get that, but I feel like there's a difference between doing whatever you want because that doesn't really apply to any game and knowing what you can do, right?
Yeah,
Like teach people, I say teach people the alphabet first, and then let them write their story. Don't like expect a story from them to play the game without them knowing what alphabet you're using. So teach people the
yeah,
the fundamentals, and then let them go. Because there's so much
100%.
content in RuneScape, right? Like, okay, go do Dragon Slayer. That's not that is like 0.1% of the game's content. Like, relax.
Yeah.
That's my maybe like hot take about it, but yeah.
No, no, I agree. I think even in like late game, like kind of what I was saying before about when I was playing before I started the series was like having a journey, having an overarching goal is so important because I was logging on because I didn't have one. So I'd log on, stand at the bank for half an hour, and then log off. And it's so I think even past the point of entry, like when you
Yeah.
kind of give people that understanding of how to do things, there's even a point of like mid game, like
Oh,
from
you're
mid game to
always
late
setting
game.
goals.
You're
Always.
always setting goals, and you
Yeah.
always need that story, that arc that you're currently going on, to kind of get through it. Because
Yeah.
I think otherwise you will just fall off. You will just fall
Exactly.
off, and you kind of you just don't have that overarching goal that you need to carry on. Dude, I'm gonna have to jump off.
No, please.
Unfortunately,
That we've been going on for so long. It's
but I've absolutely loved it.
yeah, no, listen. Thank you so much for coming on. I was gonna say one thing. I was gonna cut it off too. So it's been like 2.5 hours. So I appreciate, you coming on and chatting with me. And
It's been
obviously,
it's so good. I love chatting about this sort of stuff. So yeah,
definitely.
thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
Really,
please,
really
please.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and I appreciate you coming on, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And you're free to come back whenever. Have a wonderful
I
rest of
appreciate
the day.
that.
Thank you so much.
You too, man.
All right, man.
See you later.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.